Chapter 112. Cheating. Chu Fengyan didn't bother to hide the ridicule in his eyes. He spat out a few words of sarcasm. Are the people from the Chung family and family Chu all idiots? You, Chu Fengyan, how dare you be so arrogant after cheating? Is it possible for a body-refining realm martial artist to hunt 1,000 demonic beasts by himself? The cultivator from the family Chu was not to be outdone as he spoke to the white-haired elder. Elder, please investigate the truth. A cheating brat is not qualified to enter our Academy of Wuxing. Idiot. Chu Fengyan couldn't help but say this when he heard the cultivator from the family Chu. He didn't lower his voice when he said this, so all the martial artists present could hear him clearly. You, Chu Fengyan, are you really out of control? This is the Academy of Wuxing. What, do you want to teach me a lesson? Chu Fengyan's eyes were filled with killing intent. The cultivator from the family Chu didn't dare to speak when he saw Chu Fengyan's killing intent. Teach him a lesson? With Chu Fengyan's strength, killing him would be as easy as crushing an ant. Even Chu Beige wasn't Chu Fengyan's match. So how could they, a branch family disciple, be Chu Fengyan's opponent? His hopes were all placed on the white-haired elder. Elder, shut up. Before the cultivator from the family Chu could speak, the white-haired elder interrupted him. All of Chu Fengyan's demonic cores are indeed from the demonic beasts on this deserted island. There is no problem. After the white-haired elder said those words, the Chu clan's cultivator was immediately left speechless. He was unable to say another word. The Academy of Wuxing had chosen this deserted island as the location for the test after careful consideration. The demonic beasts on this deserted island were extremely special and couldn't be found in the country of Wuxing. Therefore, these demonic cores couldn't be fake. The white-haired elder's words made it clear that there was no problem with Chu Fengyan's demonic cores. Although this second assessment was called the Demonic Beast Hunting Assessment, in reality, it did not prohibit martial artists from snatching from each other. Therefore, even if Chu Fengyan didn't kill these monster cores, it wouldn't be a problem even if Chu Fengyan picked them up. In that case, do you have anything else to say? Chu Fengyan looked at the warrior from the family Chu and sneered. With these methods, he still wanted to target Chu Fengyan. He couldn't even disgust Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan, just you wait. Our family Chu isn't that easy to bully. When you enter the academy, you'll know what it means to be stupid. The warrior from family Chu said coldly. As long as Chu Fengyan entered Wuxing Academy, the family Chu would have 10,000 ways to crush him. Stupid? You're the one who's truly stupid. Chu Fengyan's eyes revealed some coldness as he looked at the warrior from the family Chu and suddenly opened his mouth. Threats without strength are just courting death. As he spoke, a surge of spiritual energy suddenly erupted from Chu Fengyan's body. This surge of spiritual energy filled Chu Fengyan's body without any concealment. It was like a ferocious tiger that was ready to kill its prey at any time. What? You dare to make a move? We're in the middle of the assessment. If you dare to make a move, you'll be provoking Wuxing Academy. The warrior from family Chu didn't back down when he saw the spiritual energy erupting from Chu Fengyan's body. He dared to ridicule Chu Fengyan because they were in front of the elders of Wuxing Academy. Wuxing Academy forbade private fights, although this was only a rule on the surface. However, if he rashly made a move in front of the elders wouldn't just stand by and watch. Is that so? Provoking Wuxing Academy? Do you think this rule will work on me? Chu Fengyan's eyes turned cold as his body suddenly moved. His speed was so fast that the white-haired elder couldn't react in time. When he finally reacted, Chu Fengyan was already in front of the warrior from family Chu. Have mercy! The white-haired elder shouted hurriedly. As the invigilator, he was already in a lot of trouble when Chung Kong got into trouble. If another warrior from family Chu got into trouble, if that was the case, his position as an elder would be over. How dare you? Even though Chu Fengyan was in front of him, the warrior from family Chu didn't show any fear in his eyes. In his opinion, Chu Fengyan was just bluffing. He couldn't believe that Chu Fengyan dared to challenge Wuxing Academy's rules. Slap! However, in the next moment, a clear and melodious voice caused all the thoughts in his heart to completely collapse. Chu Fengmian's slap landed accurately on the warrior from Family Chu's face. Although Chu Fengmian didn't use his full strength, he didn't hold back either. The flesh on the warrior's face was almost torn off by Chu Fengmian's slap. It was obvious how ruthless Chu Fengmian's slap was. How dare he hit me? How dare he hit me in front of an elder? The Chu family's warriors were repeating these two sentences in their minds. In his opinion, no matter how arrogant Chu Fengmian was, he wouldn't dare to defy Wuxing Academy's rules. But he was wrong. Chu Fengmian was a person who would never be threatened or restrained. He was a truly lawless person. From the very beginning, Chu Fengmian didn't care about Wuxing Academy's rules. You said I wouldn't dare? Chu Fengmian sneered. Slap. Another slap landed on the warrior from Family Chu's face. This time, the warrior from Family Chu's face was bleeding profusely. Chu Fengmian's two slaps had disfigured the warrior from Family Chu's face. It was a bloody mess for a moment. Chu Fengmian, I'll kill you. After the two slaps, the warrior from Family Chu finally reacted. Spiritual power erupted from his body as he threw a punch at Chu Fengmian. You know how to resist. Unfortunately, it's useless. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. Chu Fengmian moved his hand and blasted out a palm. The warrior from Family Chu was sent flying by the palm and fell to the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. Chu Fengmian, stop. The white-haired elder hurriedly stood in front of Chu Fengmian. If he didn't intervene, the warrior from Family Chu would really be killed by Chu Fengmian. The white-haired elder walked to the side of the Chu family martial artist and felt the Chu family martial artist's aura. His heart relaxed slightly. Chu Fengmian's slaps were all superficial wounds. There was no problem. However, the warrior from Family Chu was humiliated. He was so angry that he fainted. Elder, you saw it. This guy asked me to hit him. You can't blame me. Chapter 113. He attacked in front of the elder of Wuxing Academy. The Family Chu warrior was not the only one who hadn't thought of this. The onlookers were also surprised. This Chu Fengmian is really arrogant. He actually dared to attack in front of the elder of Wuxing Academy and challenge the school rules. What a reckless guy. It looks like he's going to be taught a lesson. Some warriors whispered among themselves. Hearing their discussion, Chu Fengmian's smile grew wider. Teach him a lesson? Chu Fengmian didn't believe that the elder would teach him a lesson. Chu Fengmian said indifferently, Elder, it was that guy who provoked us first. You saw it too. Humph. Wuxing Academy has always prohibited private fights. Even if you're not a disciple of Wuxing Academy, you'll still be punished. The white-haired elder snorted coldly and continued to speak to Chu Fengmian. However, since you had a reason for this and it's your first offense, I'll only punish you this once. But remember, once you join Wuxing Academy, you'll have to abide by the school rules. You're not allowed to do this again. This disciple will remember. Chu Fengmian replied calmly. As he spoke, he took the identity token and stood to the side. Chu Fengmian didn't even spare a glance at the Chu family's warrior who was injured by him. Although the white-haired elder did say a few words, he didn't punish Chu Fengmian at all. He only said a few words, only this once. This sentence couldn't even be considered a lesson. This result was absolutely not something that those martial artists could have imagined. Only Lin Maju, A.O. Wuming, and the others shook their heads when they saw the crowd's reaction. Chu Fengmian had just taught the Family Chu warrior a lesson. Although it looked like he had used a lot of force, in fact, he hadn't caused any fundamental damage to the Family Chu warrior. They were all superficial wounds that couldn't be seen in public. Since Chu Fengmian didn't cause any harm, the white-haired elder wouldn't become enemies with Chu Fengmian over an ordinary Family Chu warrior. He would just casually say a few words, and the matter would be over. After all, although the rules stated that private fights were not allowed, Wuxing Academy had always respected martial arts. Everyone was a martial artist, so the simplest way to resolve a dispute was to fight. Therefore, private fights happened almost every day. The higher-ups of Wuxing Academy were afraid that things would get out of hand, so they came up with this rule. But in the dark, as long as no lives were lost, almost no one would care. Moreover, even if he were to punish Chu Fengmian, he would at most face the wall for a month. Instead of punishing Chu Fengmian like this, he might as well sell him some benefits. Chu Fengyan was this year's newcomer king, especially when he had broken 2 of Zhi Lingtian's records. With Chu Fengyan's talent, he would definitely enter the inner sect of Wuxing Academy in the future. He might even become a legendary core disciple. Offending Chu Fengyan was an extremely unwise thing to do. Chu Fengyan played with the identity card in his hand and looked at the 23,000 points on it with a smile in his eyes. These contribution points were added to the 10,000 points Chu Fengyan had obtained during the ARC assessment. 23,000 points was a wealth that even outer sect disciples who had been in the academy for several years couldn't accumulate, let alone a newcomer who had just entered the academy. When the surrounding martial artists saw the number on the identity card in Chu Fengyan's hand, their eyes flashed with greed. However, the look in their eyes changed very quickly. Greed wasn't scary, but greed without strength was just like the previous family Chu martial artist. He was courting death. Chu Fengyan was terrifying, so he wasn't someone they could afford to offend. With these contribution points, Chu Fengyan would be able to buy some things without restraint when he entered Wuxing Academy. The white-haired elder's words were actually within Chu Fengyan's expectations. He wouldn't offend Chu Fengyan for an ordinary family Chu martial artist unless he was crazy. Although the white-haired elder was afraid of family Chu and obeyed family Chu, he wasn't a member of the family Chu. He wasn't that stupid to throw his life away for family Chu. The rest of the martial artist assessment ended very quickly. The rankings were already out. Chu Fengyan was in first place. His 13,000 points made him the highest number in the history of the second assessment. It was more than twice as high as the record set by the Zhi Lingtian 15 years ago. Lin Maju and Ao Wuming were tied for second and third place respectively. 3,700 contribution points was actually very dazzling, but their radiance had been completely overshadowed by Chu Fengyan. Everyone didn't have much to say about the two of them anymore. Chu Wuyin was in fourth place. Su was in fifth place. Chu Fengyan couldn't help but take a few more glances at him. Being in fifth place wasn't just because of Chu Fengyan's help, but also because of his own efforts. Chu Fengyan wasn't interested in watching the rest of the rankings. All his thoughts were on the third round of the trial, the path to heaven. This was the reason why Chu Fengyan came to Wuxing Academy. He wanted to see the legendary path to heaven. Martial artists in the top 100, please board the first arc and head to the path to heaven. The rest of the martial artists, please board the other arcs and report to the lower level to claim your identity. The white-haired elder ordered loudly. These martial artists were divided into 2. The lower level was where the odd-job disciples of Wuxing Academy were. Those who didn't enter the top 100 would be assigned to the lower level and become odd-job disciples. Unless their strength increased greatly in the future, they might be promoted to outer sect disciples. Otherwise, they might be stuck as odd-job disciples for the rest of their lives. The martial artists who headed to the path to heaven were extremely glad. As long as they passed the second assessment, they would at least be outer sect disciples. Even if they couldn't become inner sect disciples because there weren't any hall masters or elders on the path to heaven, they would still be outer sect disciples. Becoming an outer sect disciple was much better than being an odd-job disciple. They could obtain normal resources and cultivate normally. They could avoid the heavy labor. Phew, it's finally over. I didn't expect so many unforeseen events to happen in this assessment. The white-haired elder watched the arc leave and took a deep breath. Too many things had happened in this assessment, causing him to be somewhat flustered. It seems like I have to inform the Chung family, Family Chu, and the Crown Prince. They will all be interested in Chu Fengyan. Chapter 114. What? Chung Kong is dead? In a huge palace on the upper level of Wuxing Academy, 2 old men were sitting in the palace. It was unknown what they were talking about. One of the old men took out a message jade talisman and opened it with spiritual power. The voice that came from the talisman made the old man's face turn red with anger. Isn't Chung Kong protected by someone? Besides, he has the power of the Green Alliance. Who could kill him in the test? The old man's anger was mixed with shock. When Chung Kong went to participate in the second test, the Chung family specially arranged a warrior of the Spirit Sea realm to be his bodyguard to ensure his safety. There were only screaming warriors on the deserted island. The strongest warriors were only at the peak of the body refining realm. Divine Sea realm warriors were almost invincible. That was why the old man didn't expect that someone could kill Chung Kong on the deserted island. That's impossible. The test on the deserted island is dangerous, but Mo Ching is protecting him. The other old man's face changed when he heard the words in the message Jade Talisman. They were well aware of Chung Kong's strength. He was not considered strong in this assessment. Because of this, they had specially sent Mo Ching, a Divine Sea realm warrior, to protect Chung Kong. How could Chung Kong die with the protection of a Divine Sea realm warrior? Mo Ching is dead too, the old man said in a low voice. He couldn't contact Mo Ching either. Damn it, who is it? Who dares to kill a disciple of the Chung family? The old man was furious. He continued to read the contents of the message Jade Talisman. One of the names caught his attention. Chu Fengyan. This Chu Fengyan actually managed to survive. Furthermore, he obtained first place in the trial. The old man murmured the name. In the extreme capital, Chung Qin, the young master of the Chung family, had his ribs broken by Chu Fengyan. In the eyes of the Chung family, Chu Fengyan was like an ant that could be crushed at any time. They didn't care. They sent Mo Ching to protect Chung Kong so that Mo Ching could find a chance to kill Chu Fengyan. But now, Chu Fengyan wasn't dead, but Chung Kong was. Damn it. Chung Kong's death is definitely related to this Chu Fengyan. This brat has repeatedly provoked our Chung family. Does he really think that there's no one left in our Chung family? The old man said furiously. Men, kill this brat for me. Old patriarch, please wait. Another old man hurriedly tried to persuade him. Let's put the matter of that brat aside for now. Mo Ching is dead. Will there be any problems with that matter? The other old man's eyes lit up as he spoke. Mo Ching went to the deserted island not only to protect Chung Kong and kill Chu Fengyan, but also to do something more important. Over there was the rich, lush tombstone. Now that Mo Ching was dead, there was the matter of the richly lush steel. If it weren't for the fact that the richly lush steel was still there, they would have simply ignored it and sent someone else to retrieve it. However, if the richly lush steel was taken away by someone else, then all of their plans would be foiled. Are you saying that it might be Family Chu's doing? The old patriarch of the Chung family frowned. Chu Fengyan was only at the 5th level of the body refinement realm. No matter how strong he was, the peak of the body refinement realm was his limit. That level of strength was far from enough to threaten Mo Ching. But now it wasn't just Chung Kong. Mo Ching was dead as well. This wasn't something that Chu Fengyan could have done alone. On the deserted island, the only person who could threaten Mo Ching was Family Chu's Chu Bei. They were both in the Divine Sea realm, but he was the only one who could have killed Mo Ching. The Family Chu might have allied with us, but we're still two different families. Perhaps it's Family Chu's doing. We still need to contact the Family Chu and find out what's going on. The other old man spoke slowly. The most important thing for us now is to get the richly lush steel. As for that brat, Chu Fengyan, we'll leave him to the youngsters of the Green Alliance. Our Chung family isn't that easy to bully. This brat injured Chung Qin, so of course we have to teach him a lesson. The Green Alliance's power is more than enough to deal with a brat like him. All right, the old patriarch of the Chung family's face twisted. I don't care who he is. Since he dared to kill a disciple of the Chung family, I'll cut him into pieces. At the same time, in an even larger palace on the upper level. This palace was filled with young people. They were all wearing blue robes with golden embroidery, indicating their status. They were all inner disciples of the Wu Sheng Academy. The person sitting at the very top was actually wearing a purple robe. A core disciple. This young man was the most mysterious core disciple of the Wu Sheng Academy. Although the core disciples of the Wu Sheng Academy were called disciples, their strength and status were higher than many hall masters and elders. There were people who could cover the sky with one hand. They were enough to strike fear into the hearts of many families. Crown Prince, the results of this year's assessment are out. A young martial artist hurried into the palace and knelt before the man in the lead. This young martial artist was an inner disciple, but in front of the crown prince, he was as humble as a servant. The crown prince wasn't a name, but a title. In the Wusheng Academy, there was only one person who could bear this title. He was the #1 genius of the Wusheng Academy, Zhi Lingtian. The title Crown Prince represented Zhi Lingtian's current status in the Martial Victory Academy. He was second only to one person and above tens of thousands of people. Other than the dean of the Martial Victory Academy, all the hall masters and elders were respectful to Zhi Lingtian. Therefore, he was like the crown prince of the Wusheng Academy. Almost everyone thought that he would be the next principal. Crown Prince, please take a look. Rongtai, there's no need to trouble the crown prince with such a small matter. Go down and see if there are any talented disciples. Let them join the sacred hall. Before Zhi Lingtian could speak, a dark-skinned martial artist beside him said coldly. This dark-skinned martial artist was also wearing purple robes. He was a core disciple. Get lost. Don't disturb the crown prince. Young Master D, there are some unforeseen circumstances in the assessment. Let the crown prince take a look. Rongtai hesitated for a moment before speaking up. There are a few talented geniuses in this year's batch. I thought it was something special. Aren't there the so-called 4 geniuses of the extreme capital in this year's batch? These young fellows are quite famous. Just let them all join the sacred hall, the dark-skinned martial artist said. The dark-skinned martialist said. When he mentioned joining the sacred hall, his tone sounded as if it was a gift to him. Chapter 115. This year's newcomer isn't that simple. Have you heard of Chu Fengmian? Rongtai paused and said, Chu Fengmian? Family Chu's member? Young Master D frowned. Family Chu's member is Chu Lang, right? Where did this Chu Fengmian come from? Young Master D, you're wrong. Chu Fengmian isn't a member of Family Chu. Although his surname is Chu, he's an outsider. Rongtai glanced at Zhi Lingtian, who was sitting calmly at the highest point. In this assessment, Chu Fengmian broke the crown prince's record. Hearing Rongtai's words, Zhi Lingtian, who had been calm all this time, finally moved his lips slightly. What's going on? Speak. Even though Zhi Lingtian's tone was calm, everyone who heard it could feel a sense of superiority and majesty. They could only obey, not daring to refute. Here's the thing. Chu Fengmian's first assessment, the martial testing stone, broke the crown prince's record and reached LV9 of the body, refining realm. I thought it was a big deal. The martial testing stone is just a formality. Everyone here should know that when the crown prince entered the academy, his strength had already reached the divine sea realm. He only showed his strength at LV8 of the body, refining realm, to hide it. Even if it were us, it would be easy for us to break the record. Young Master D said with dissatisfaction. How can you disturb the crown prince with such a trivial matter? He's just a newcomer. Let him join the sacred hall and work for the crown prince. Rongtai said hurriedly. No, it's not that simple. The results of the second assessment just came out. Chu Fengmian's points also broke the crown prince's record. How much? The crown prince said calmly. 13,000 points. As soon as Rongtai said that, everyone's expression changed. They couldn't help but look at him. What? 13,000 points? Rongtai, are you sure? All the martial artists present had participated in the assessment before. They naturally knew how terrifying this number was. Ling Tian, the #1 genius of the Martial Victory Academy and the current crown prince of the Holy Hall, only had 5,100 points back then. Even if that hadn't been Zhi Lingtian's full strength, he still wouldn't have been able to reach 13,000 points. Oh, Zhi Lingtian's expression finally changed. This number was enough to make him take it seriously. I thought that this batch of newcomers didn't have any potential. I didn't expect such a person to appear. Zhi Lingtian muttered to himself. Rongtai, go and find Chu Fengmian after the assessment. Ask him to join our Saint Hall. We can't let other forces get such a genius. Zhi Lingtian spoke. His tone was like a supreme decision, and there was no way to refute it. Yes. Rongtai lowered his head and agreed. Then, his expression showed some difficulty. Crown Prince, what if that brat refuses to join? Rongtai had also heard of Chu Fengmian's deeds. Chu Fengmian's arrogance didn't seem like a good person, especially newcomers like him, who were all proud and arrogant when they joined the academy. It was easier said than done to get them to join. Oomph. If he refuses to join, then we'll pull that brat over by force. How dare a newcomer refuse our St. Hall's invitation? The dark-skinned martial artist looked at Zhi Lingtian and said respectfully, Crown Prince, do you want me to go? If that brat dares to refuse, I'll beat him until he's convinced. The dark-skinned martial artist's tone was filled with the smell of blood. Obviously, this wasn't the first time he had done such a thing. The St. Hall's supreme status in the Martial Victory Academy wasn't just for show. It was achieved through countless bloody battles. You don't have to worry about this. The Crown Prince glanced at the dark-skinned martial artist and said. He turned his head and looked at Rong Tai. I'll leave this matter to you. Our St. Hall doesn't keep idle people. If you can't even deal with a newcomer, then don't stay in our St. Hall. Get out of the academy yourself. I don't care what methods you use. Even if that brat doesn't join our St. Hall, he can't join other forces. Zhi Lingtian's tone was resolute and decisive. If the St. Hall couldn't get such a genius, other forces wouldn't be able to either. If worst came to worst, they would destroy Chu Fengmian together. Yes. Rong Tai nodded and strode outside. He was full of confidence. Yes, so what if Chu Fengmian was a genius with great aptitude? A genius was just a genius. Before his strength grew, there was no difference between a genius and an ordinary person. He was a St. Hall martial artist and an inner disciple of the Martial Victory Academy. How could he not be able to deal with a newcomer? Especially since he was backed by the St. Hall. He didn't believe that anyone would dare to refuse the St. Hall's invitation. Even if Chu Fengmian was arrogant, he wouldn't dare. Not only the St. Hall, but other forces also received news about Chu Fengmian. A person who had broken the record of the highest Lingtian realm, and a person who had broken the record twice. Such a genius had attracted the attention of countless forces in the Martial Victory Academy. Chu Fengmian naturally didn't know about the commotion outside. He was now sitting in the ark and flying in the direction of the heavenly path. Soon, a giant pagoda that was thousands of feet tall appeared in Chu Fengmian's sight. The heavenly path wasn't a path, but a pagoda. What powerful spiritual energy. This heavenly path is at least a heaven-grade spiritual weapon, or even a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. Chu Fengmian was shocked when he saw the heavenly path. As the disciple of the master of sword principle in his previous life, he had seen all kinds of spiritual weapons. But even among the countless spiritual weapons he had seen in his previous life, there are only a few that could be compared to the heavenly path. An academy in such a remote country actually has such a spiritual weapon. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but exclaim, Senior Brother Chu, it seems that you also have such a shocked expression. Seeing the shock on Chu Fengmian's face, Chu Wuyin said with a smile. But I'm afraid that any martial artist would have the same expression when they see the heavenly path for the first time. I had the same expression when I saw it for the first time. Oh? So junior sister, Chu has seen the heavenly path before? Chu Fengmian was surprised when he heard Chu Wuyin's words. Chapter 116. Wuyin came to Wu Sheng Academy once when she was young. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Chu Wuyin was a little embarrassed and quickly changed the topic. Senior Brother Chu, how much do you know about the heavenly path? A phantom will appear every time you enter the heavenly path. The phantom on the first level has the same strength as the cultivator, and the strength of the phantom will increase with each subsequent level. Chu Fengmian said calmly. These were all things that he had heard from Yufeng. That was all Chu Fengmian knew about the heavenly path. However, Chu Fengmian knew that the heavenly path wasn't as simple as it looked. This spiritual artifact was at least a heaven-grade, upper-grade spiritual artifact. This ability was at most the tip of the iceberg. Even the experts of Wu Sheng Academy wouldn't be able to discover the entirety of the heavenly path. After all, the grade of the heavenly path was too high. Even the higher-ups of Wu Sheng Academy could only understand a little about it and couldn't fully control it. Otherwise, no one would be able to control the heavenly path. Not to mention being invincible in Wu Sheng Academy. Even in Wu Sheng country and the 9 regions, they would be considered a terrifying expert. It seems like Chu Wuyin's identity is related to Wu Sheng Academy, even if he isn't a member of a big family. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. Chu Fengmian had never been interested in Chu Wuyin's identity. After all, Chu Fengmian didn't care about Chu Wuyin's identity. Actually, other than being a training ground for cultivators, the heavenly path is also very important. It's the reward. Chu Wuyin looked at Chu Fengmian and said with a smile, "Rumor has it that the heavenly path was built by the founder of Wu Sheng Academy. That founder placed countless treasures in the heavenly path as rewards. Actually, you can get a reward every time you pass a level. The higher the level, the better the reward. Because of this, many inner disciples and even core disciples often come to challenge the heavenly path. However, this reward can only be obtained once. For example, after reaching the 10th level last time and obtaining the reward of the 10th level, one can only continue to obtain it when one attempts to reach an even higher level." Chu Wuyin, on the other hand, was extremely familiar with the heavenly path. She explained it in more detail than Yufeng. Chu Fengmian listened quietly and also heard an important point. Reward. According to Chu Wuyin, many of the martial artists who came to challenge the heavenly path were here for the rewards. For the inner sect disciples of the Martial Victory Academy, even the core disciples, there were tempting rewards. For Chu Fengmian, it was definitely very attractive. What Chu Fengmian needed the most was resources. He needed endless resources to feed the primordial war dragon shadow in his body. Chu Fengmian originally thought that it would be enough to display a portion of his strength, but now it seemed that he should indeed strive for a higher level. This way, the rewards he would receive would also be better. As for Chu Wuyin's claim that the heavenly path was built by a sect's founder, Chu Fengmian snorted in disdain. If Wu Sheng Academy had such a terrifying ancestor, how could they still be living in such a small place? It was most likely that Wu Sheng Academy had come across the heavenly path by chance and made it up. While the two of them were conversing, the ark was already nearing the 1,000-foot-tall tower. Dong! The ark stopped in front of cliff. Countless martial artists jumped down from the ark and arrived in front of the 1,000-foot-tall tower. Several elders were already waiting in front of the tower. At the same time, Chu Fengmian felt that there were dozens of auras hidden around the heavenly path. The weakest of these auras were at least in the Divine Sea realm, while the strongest ones were at the Wind controlling realm. It seems that there are many experts from Wu Sheng Academy here. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. Previously, Yufeng also said that the third test, the heavenly path, was not only to test the talent of martial artists. It was also for some hall masters and elders to come and recruit disciples. These hall masters and elders were hidden in the surroundings. If there were martial artists with talents that satisfied them, they would choose to recruit them as disciples. Oh, there's an aura whose strength I can't see through? Chu Fengmian observed the auras around him. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly. Among the countless auras, there was one aura whose strength Chu Fengmian couldn't see through. With Chu Fengmian's current spiritual consciousness, he could see through a martial artist at the peak of the Wind controlling realm. Only martial artists of the Divine Power realm could make Chu Fengmian unable to see through their strength. Divine Power realm. This was a realm completely different from the Wind controlling realm. The Divine Power realm meant that one had the strength of a god in a human body. Although it was a little exaggerated, the Divine Power realm and the Wind controlling realm were completely different realms. Not only was there a difference in strength, but it was as if they came from two different creatures. In the demonic beast clan, as long as they reached the Divine Power realm, they would be respectfully called demonic god. As for human martial artists, if they stepped into the Divine Power realm, they would also be given a title, saint. A saint would be treated with great respect in any country. Even the 7 great sects wouldn't underestimate saint. Chu Fengmian didn't expect Wu Sheng Academy to have such a foundation. They actually had a saint. Everyone might know that the third test is the heavenly path. An elder stood in front of the pagoda and explained loudly. Everyone, once you enter this pagoda, you will be able to step onto the heavenly path. Within it, you can display your strength to your heart's content, because there will be many hall masters and elders coming to watch. The stronger your strength is, the higher the chance of you being selected. Once you are selected, you can choose to be an apprentice and become an inner disciple. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You must remember to display your strongest strength. Don't hide anything. Even if you aren't selected, you don't have to feel regretful. As outer disciples, you can still attend classes. As long as you're valued by other home masters and elders, you can even be promoted to inner disciples. The order of entering the heavenly path will be based on the previous order. Yao Fang, come out. As the elders spoke, a skinny martial artist stood out from the crowd. This martial artist's strength was around the second level of the body refining realm. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have been able to pass the second test. However, because of the ancient dragon turtle, he killed more than 100 Green Alliance martial artists. Therefore, he was lucky enough to enter this round. Enter and display your strength to your heart's content. Yes. Chapter 117. In front of the giant pagoda, an image appeared. It was Yao Fang's performance in the heavenly path. The first level of the heavenly path was filled with warriors with the same strength as Yao Fang. Warriors who were able to enter Wu Sheng Academy all had some aptitude. Not long after, the first phantom was defeated by Yao Fang. Soon, he reached the second level. The illusory figure on the second level was actually stronger than the illusory figure on the first level. Yao Fang's battle became more difficult. After more than 10 minutes, he barely defeated the image on the second level. From the looks of it, the second level of illusory images was his limit. Countless elders who were watching from the side shook their heads. This level of strength was indeed disappointing. It wasn't much. As expected, after Yao Fang stepped into the third level, he was defeated by the image on the third level in 2 or 3 moves. In front of Yao Fang, a jade bottle slowly appeared. This should be the reward that Chu Wuyin mentioned. In this jade bottle, there was a blue elixir. On this elixir, 2 clear blue lines could be seen. Elixir markings. Profound Great Elixir. Looking at the blue elixir in front of Yao Fang, the warriors on the scene were all excited. Yao Fang had only passed the second level of the heavenly path, but he actually received a profound Great Elixir as his reward. Foundation Elixir, a profound lower grade elixir. However, its effect is 100 times better than the energy gathering elixir. A small portion of it is equivalent to 100 energy gathering elixirs. Chu Fengmian had refined countless medicinal pellets in the past. Naturally, he was able to recognize what kind of medicinal pellet Yao Fang had obtained with a single glance. Go down and report to the outer sect. When the supervising elder saw Yao Fang appear, he calmly said these words. Yao Fang's performance was unable to move the home masters and elders. Since he couldn't be selected, he could only go to the outer sect and become an outer sect disciple. Yes. Yao Fang held the foundation elixir and replied excitedly. He then walked towards the outer sect. To him, it was already a blessing to be able to enter the outer sect. Next, another warrior entered the heavenly path. Not long after, he was also thrown out. Just like Yao Fang, he also fell on the third level. Report to the outer sect. Next, the supervising elder said expressionlessly. Those who were at the bottom of the list did not have much of a chance. If they wanted to enter the eyes of the home masters and elders, only the newcomers ranked in the top 10 would have chance. As the test continued, almost everyone entered the fourth level. Most of the people failed at the third level. Only a small portion of people were able to enter the fourth level. The Through Heavens Road test was originally a shortcut to reach the heavens in a single bound. For the majority of martial artists, they didn't have any expectations. Even if he failed, he wasn't too disappointed. To be able to enter the outer sect, he was already one of the best among this batch of newcomers. Next, Suhu. Unknowingly, a long time had passed. There were only 5 people left in the examination. Among them, the warrior named Ran Xing, who was previously ranked 6th, had already made it to the 9th level. However, when he was on the 9th level, even if he made it to the 9th level, not a single hall master or elder wanted to take him as a disciple. Ran Xing could only leave silently. This test is really abnormal. Even Ran Xing couldn't get the favor of any hall master or elder. Some of the surrounding martial artists began to discuss among themselves. Ranqing's strength was originally second only to the four geniuses. In the eyes of the crowd, he had a high chance of entering the inner sect. However, they didn't expect the result to be so cruel. With Su Hu's strength, he might be able to challenge the 10th level. Chu Fengmian looked at Su Hu and thought to himself. Su Hu's strength had been tempered quite a bit on the deserted island. The current him might really be able to challenge the 10th level. At least from Chu Fengmian's point of view, Su Hu was much stronger than Ranqing. Su Hu entered the Through Heavens Road. He didn't use much strength in the first few levels and passed them in one go. Soon, in less than 5 minutes, he was already standing on the 9th level, the same as Ranqing. It seemed that he was much more relaxed than Ranqing. Su Hu's realm had reached the 5th level of the body, refining realm. What he was facing was a shadow at the peak of the 5th level of the body, refining realm. The shadow's strength was already infinitely close to the 6th level of the body, refining realm. It could be said that Su Hu's battle was a battle that crossed a level. Bang! Su Hu's figure suddenly collided with the shadow and started a frenzied battle. The two figures were completely competing in strength. It was actually difficult to distinguish between them. Su Hu's strength is really shocking. During the arc test, his strength was far from being this strong. I didn't expect him to improve so quickly. A middle-aged man with muscles all over his body whispered to himself, "He's a good seedling." Oh, Hall Master Gu is interested in Su Hu? An old man beside Hall Master Gu said with a smile. Su Hu's cultivation is pure martial arts. He's extremely compatible with the ancient martial arts hall. That's right. If Su Hu can pass this stage, I'll take him as my disciple. Hall Master Gu's tone was filled with anticipation. Bang, bang, bang. On the Through Heaven Road, the battle between Su Hu and the shadow was nearing its end. A powerful brute force suddenly erupted from Su Hu's body. He grabbed the shadow and crazily smashed it to the ground. Boom! With a loud bang, the illusory figure was completely shattered. He passed the 9th level. So strong. For Su Hu to be able to enter the top 5 in this year's competition, there's no doubt about his strength. Countless warriors looked at the scene and muttered to themselves. They originally thought that Su Hu entering the top 5 was a fluke, but now it seemed that it was indeed based on his strength. However, for Su Hu, the 9th level was his limit. He stood up and walked towards the 10th level. The moment the shadow on the 10th level condensed, it fiercely punched at Su Hu. Bang! Su Hu's figure was instantly thrown out of the tower. At the same time, a medicinal pill slowly appeared in front of him. True martial pill. It's actually such a generous reward. The surrounding warriors looked at the pill in Su Hu's hand, and their faces were filled with jealousy. This true martial pill was a black-level upper-grade pill that could train a warrior's body. Chapter 118. With this true martial elixir, I will definitely challenge the 10th floor next time. Su Hu took the true martial elixir and stood up, intending to leave. A figure suddenly appeared in front of Su Hu. It was Hall Master Gu. Su Hu, are you willing to be my disciple and join the ancient martial arts hall? Hall Master Gu did not waste any time. This is the Hall Master of the Ancient Martial Arts Hall. Ancient Martial Arts Hall. This Su Hu is really lucky. He actually got the favor of a Hall Master. The Ancient Martial Arts Hall is one of the upper middle-class halls in the Wuxing Academy. Me. Su Hu was stunned when he saw Hall Master Gu. Then he said excitedly, I am willing. Being able to be the disciple of a Hall Master and be promoted to the inner sect was definitely what all the newcomers wanted. Great. From now on, you are a disciple of the Ancient Martial Arts Hall. Be promoted to the inner sect. Pack up your things and leave with your master. Hall Master Gu laughed heartily. He was already satisfied to be able to receive such a satisfactory disciple. From today onwards, Su Hu will reach the sky in a single bound. That's right. Su Hu will be an inner sect disciple in the future. With the cultivation of the Ancient Martial Arts Hall Master, he will definitely improve rapidly. Countless martial artists said enviously. Su Hu was able to enter the Ancient Martial Arts Hall because of his outstanding performance. Reaching the 10th floor meant that he was able to fight those above his level. Next, Chu Wuyin. Without any hesitation, a white figure walked into the tower. Chu Wuyin was holding a guqin. As the strings were plucked, the phantom in front of him suddenly shattered. In front of Chu Wuyin, the first 10 levels were passed with ease. In terms of strength, the 4 geniuses of the extreme capital were indeed extraordinary. Chu Wuyin persisted until the 15th floor before he was defeated. A female elder walked out and accepted Chu Wuyin as her disciple. She was also promoted to an inner sect disciple. Ao Wuming and Lin Maju also entered and persisted until the 16th floor before they were defeated. The 2 of them were also taken away by the 2 hall masters as their disciples. Now, only Chu Fengyan was left among all the newcomers. It's finally the monster's turn. I wonder how many levels this freak will be able to reach. Back then, Zhiling Tian set a record by reaching the 45th level. I wonder what Chu Fengyan will achieve this time. Countless warriors looked at Chu Fengyan expectantly. The only person who could possibly surpass Ling Tian's record was Chu Fengyan. Since Chu Fengyan had already broken 2 records in Ling Tian, they wanted to see if Chu Fengyan could break the 3rd record. Hall Master Qin, Elder Mo, why are you here? Not far away, several old men were talking to each other. Their gazes were all fixed on Chu Fengyan, who was about to enter the through path. Huh, a monstrous genius has appeared in this batch. How can I not come take a look? Hall Master Qin laughed heartily and said, I heard that this kid has broken 2 records of Zhiling Tian. Maybe he's another Zhiling Tian. I want to see what kind of monstrous genius this kid is. It's hard to say whether he's another Zhiling Tian. After all, although Zhiling Tian's performance in the entrance exam was amazing, his real strength was his performance after entering the academy. Another old man, Emo Zhonglai, said, however, this Chu Fengyan is indeed an extremely outstanding genius. Everyone has the desire to seek talent. This old man also wants to accept a disciple. Oh, Elder Emo actually wants to take him in as a disciple? Hall Master Qin said, in surprise. This Elder Emo hadn't accepted a disciple for 10 years. Now, because of Chu Fengyan, he wanted to accept a disciple. Of course, but rumors are just rumors. Let's see how strong Chu Fengyan is. Elder Emo said in a low voice and stopped talking. He focused all his attention on Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan had already entered the 1st level of the through path. An illusory figure that looked exactly like Chu Fengyan had already condensed. The strength of the 7th level of the body, refining realm. It was exactly the same as Chu Fengyan's realm. Although the realm was the same, the strength was far different. Bang! Chu Fengyan didn't use any fancy moves. He just clenched his right fist and punched at the illusory figure. The illusory figure of the 1st level shattered with a loud bang. Chu Fengyan arrived at the 2nd level very easily. Bang! It was almost the same punch as before. The illusory figure of the 2nd level was also easily shattered by Chu Fengyan. Bang! 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 The 3rd level, the 4th level, the 5th level. The illusory figures that Chu Fengyan encountered along the way were all easily shattered by Chu Fengyan's punch. In the blink of an eye, Chu Fengyan arrived at the 15th level. The 15th level was already the limit that Chu Wuyin had reached. Bang! Chu Fengyan condensed another punch and suddenly smashed at the illusory figure of the 15th level. Under this punch, the illusory figure was also shattered abruptly. It didn't have any strength to resist at all. What kind of monster is this Chu Fengyan? Even the illusory figure of the 15th level couldn't take a punch from him? Could it be that his strength is really terrifying to such an extent? Originally, when Chu Fengyan achieved this scene on the first few levels, it wasn't enough to shock them. However, this was already the 15th level. As one of the 4 great geniuses, Chu Wuyin was defeated on this level. However, in front of Chu Fengyan, the illusory figure of the 15th level was like an ant. It was easily shattered by Chu Fengyan's punch. From beginning to end, Chu Fengyan had only relied on 1 punch to reach the 15th level. He had never used a second punch. This Chu Fengyan is indeed monstrous and extremely conceited. Elder Emo looked at Chu Fengyan and said in a low voice, In him, I see the shadow of the former Zhi Lingtian. He's just as powerful, just as monstrous. He's even more arrogant and conceited than Zhi Lingtian. Elder Mo could see that after Chu Fengmian threw the first punch, he stopped and didn't care about the result at all. This was a mentality that only people who were extremely confident in their own strength would have. In Chu Fengmian's opinion, the path to heaven was actually such an easy task. Everyone's hearts were filled with grief and indignation. In their opinion, this level was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. However, it was actually so easy in Chu Fengmian's hands. The 16th level. Every time Chu Fengmian went up a level, he would silently say it. Chapter 119. The 16th floor, the 17th floor, the 18th floor. Chu Fengmian didn't stop. He reached the 30th floor in a blink of an eye. The 30th floor. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, he's facing a shadow in the Divine Sea realm. Seeing Chu Fengmian reach the 30th floor, the warriors present felt numb. They wanted to see how many floors Chu Fengmian would be obstructed. In the first 30 floors, none of the shadows could cause any trouble to Chu Fengmian. They were all smashed by Chu Fengmian's punch. But now, the shadows on the 30th floor had reached the Divine Sea realm. This little guy's pace is slowing down. The 30th floor should be enough to force him to show his true strength. Elder Mo looked at Chu Fengmian and whispered to himself. Chu Fengmian defeated the previous 29 floors with one punch. This was not only because Chu Fengmian was showing his strength, but also because he was hiding something. Now, facing a shadow in the Divine Sea realm, Chu Fengmian should use his full strength. Little guy, it's been 10 years. No newcomer has reached the 30th floor for 10 years. This is a pleasant surprise for me. The shadow in front of Chu Fengmian suddenly spoke. This shadow looked like another Chu Fengmian, but his tone was completely different from Chu Fengmian's. It was an extremely old voice. Chu Fengmian looked at the shadow and asked with a change in his eyes, "Are you the spirit of the heavenly road?" "Oh, you're not qualified to know my identity. If you want to know, go to a higher level," the shadow said coldly and arrogantly. "But whether you can pass this level or not depends on your strength. Starting from this level, your strength has reached the Divine Sea realm. I won't go easy on you. Spirits of the 5 elements." The power of the 5 elements suddenly condensed on the shadow's body. Among them, the fire spirit was the strongest. It suddenly turned into a flaming tiger and pounced on Chu Fengmian. This shadow's strength had reached the Divine Sea realm. He could also use the spirit-controlling technique of the Divine Sea realm. "You want to stop me with just these 5 elemental spirits?" Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a mocking smile as he called out softly, "Sword!" Chu Fengmian summoned the black azure sword from his storage pouch and held it tightly in his hand. Facing the flaming tiger that was pouncing at him, he suddenly turned the tip of his sword. "Break! This!" The seemingly ordinary sword strike contained a sharp sword intent. The flaming tiger was cut into 2 halves by the sword intent and shattered into pieces. The illusory figure standing in front of Chu Fengmian was also shattered by the sword. One sword. Chu Fengmian defeated the illusory figure on the 30th floor with just one sword strike. Too strong. This Chu Fengmian is too strong. Killing the shadow of a Spirit Sea Realm warrior with one sword strike. Could it be that Chu Fengmian has the ability to kill a Spirit Sea Realm warrior with one sword strike? It's extremely difficult for a body-refining realm warrior to defeat a Spirit Sea Realm warrior. Is it really possible for a body-refining realm warrior to kill a Spirit Sea Realm warrior with one sword strike? The crowd below was in an uproar. Many warriors had forgotten that they were not allowed to talk loudly and were shouting in shock. But now, the supervising elder in charge of maintaining order was also shocked. He was not in the mood to maintain order. Since when did a Spirit Sea Realm warrior become so weak that he could be killed by Chu Fengmian's sword strike? It should be noted that the illusory figure on the heaven-reaching road was no different from a real warrior in the same realm. The display of the 5 elemental spirits just now was even stronger than that of many warriors who had just entered the Spirit Sea Realm. Elder Mo, you should be tempted by this kind of sword technique. Hall Master Qin looked at Elder Mo and said with a smile, It was worth watching this time. Our Wuxing Academy has given birth to another peerless genius. At least I can conclude that this Chu Fengyan is not inferior to the former Zhi Tian. This sword strike alone was enough to shock everyone present. This was only a small part of Chu Fengyan's strength. At the very least, they believed that Chu Fengyan had even more terrifying trump cards hidden in his body. Another Zhi Tian had appeared. This was the only thought in the minds of all the warriors, elders, and hall masters present. 15 years ago, a Zhi Tian had appeared and completely reshuffled the Wuxing Academy. No one knew what kind of waves this Chu Fengyan would cause this time. Another Zhi Tian? Countless people's conversations were heard by Chu Fengyan. A trace of disdain flashed in Chu Fengyan's eyes. What was Zhi Tian? He, Chu Fengyan, was once the #1 swordsman. Did he need to be compared with a little guy? Sooner or later, Zhi Tian would be trampled under Chu Fengyan's feet. In the future, when the name of the #1 swordsman was mentioned, it would only be Chu Fengyan, not Zhi Tian. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Chu Fengyan held the dark blue sword and killed on the path to heaven again. With Chu Fengyan's sword intent, the illusory shadow at the first LV of the Spirit Sea realm was easily killed. Unknowingly, Chu Fengyan had arrived at the 45th floor. The 45th floor was the record set by Zhi Tian, and it was also the place where Zhi Tian stopped. The shadow that Chu Fengyan faced had also reached the 2nd level of the Divine Sea realm. Compared with Chu Fengyan, it was 4 levels higher. Not to mention that there was a gap of 1 level between them. Boom! As soon as the shadow of the 45th floor appeared, it was suddenly enveloped by a mass of wind spirit. It was as if it was the incarnation of the wind spirit. It rushed toward Chu Fengyan abruptly. This shadow was not in existence without consciousness. It had combat experience and knew the principle of striking first to gain the upper hand. As soon as Chu Fengyan stepped into the 45th floor, it suddenly attacked and was ready to catch Chu Fengyan off guard. A sneak attack. Chu Fengyan's eyes froze and his sword moved. A streak of sword energy slashed out along with the sword. The sword aura was astonishingly fast. Without any sound, it slashed towards the illusory figure. As the sword energy flashed, the shadow's body was cut in half. Now, it did not have much strength left. Chu Fengyan moved his feet and the sword flashed. The sword accurately pierced into the shadow's chest. This shadow was killed by Chu Fengyan's sword again. Chapter 120. Dong, dong, dong. 3 loud chimes sounded from the top of the tower. The 3 chimes spread throughout the entire Wuxing Academy. Everyone, regardless of whether they were from the upper, middle, or lower levels, could hear the chimes clearly. Are these the chimes of the heavenly path? What's going on? Why are the bells ringing on the heavenly path? The last time the bells were rung on the heavenly path was 15 years ago when Crown Prince Zhi Tian participated in the entrance examination. What's going on this time? Could it be that someone from this batch of newcomers has surpassed Zhi Tian? In the entire Wuxing Academy, almost everyone stopped what they were doing and looked in the direction of the gigantic tower. At the same time, countless figures abruptly flew towards the 1,000-feet-tall tower, wanting to see what was going on. Originally, there were less than 100 elders and hall masters who came to watch. Now that the bell had rung, nearly 300 elders and hall masters had gathered around the 10,000-feet-tall tower. Almost all of the elders and hall masters of the Wuxing Academy had come. Even those who usually didn't come to watch were all present. The hall master of the battle hall, the hall master of the martial hall, and the hall master of the battle hall. Some cultivators exclaimed when they saw the figures arriving one after another. Among the countless halls of the Wuxing Academy, there were 3 halls that had always been high and mighty. No other hall had ever challenged their position. They were the battle hall, martial hall, and battle hall. These 3 halls had existed since the establishment of the Wuxing Academy. After thousands of years, they had become giants. The hall masters of these 3 halls were usually elusive, but now they had all appeared at the same time. Elder Mo, are you still not going to accept this kid as your disciple? Hall Master Qin looked at Elder Mo beside him. and said with a smile, I didn't expect that this kid would actually provoke the hall masters of the three great halls. Accept a disciple? Even if I want to accept a disciple now, I'm afraid it won't be my turn. Elder Imo shook his head helplessly when he saw more and more people coming. Although he wanted to take in Chu Fengyan as a disciple, countless elders of Wuxing Academy had already arrived. Even the three hall leaders were present. Even if he wanted to recruit a disciple, he would not stand a chance against the three hall leaders. Both of you are here. This is really rare. The hall master of the martial hall looked at the hall masters of the battle hall and the battle hall. Two hall masters, what brings you here today? You don't have to play dumb here. Isn't everyone here for the same purpose? The hall master of the battle hall said coldly. The last time the bell rang on the Heavenspan path, there was a Ji Ling Tian. Now that it's ringing again, I'm sure everyone wants to see who it is. This brat doesn't seem to be a disciple of the big clan. He's just an ordinary disciple, yet he has such terrifying talent. The hall master of the battle hall also spoke. He has already broken the record of Ling Tian. I wonder what heights he will reach in the future. The three of them called out to each other and then stopped talking. They all continued to watch Chu Fengyan's performance on the Heavenspan path. After defeating the shadow on the 45th floor, Chu Fengyan displayed his might again. 46th floor, 47th floor, 48th floor. In a few minutes, Chu Fengyan had already stepped on the 50th floor. This time, Chu Fengyan had to face an LV3 Divine Sea Realm warrior, who was 5 levels higher than Chu Fengyan. 50th floor. Since the inception of Wuxing Academy, no newcomer has ever reached this number. To be able to reach the 50th floor of the heavenly path, even if you're an inner disciple, you can be considered a top expert in the inner sect. Chu Fengyan is just a newcomer who hasn't even been trained in the academy. How can he be so terrifying? The spectators were not the only ones who were shocked. The hearts of many hall masters and elders were also filled with shock. The Martial Victory Academy had actually produced such a terrifying genius this year. He was even more terrifying than the Ji Ling Tian of the past. 50th floor. Chu Fengyan should have reached his limit. Looking at Chu Fengyan's figure, many people could no longer guess Chu Fengyan's limit. However, only some core disciples had the chance to pass the 50th floor. In many people's eyes, the 50th floor was Chu Fengyan's limit. I will take this man as my disciple. I will take him as my disciple. An elder yelled. Chu Fengyan's talent made him very eager to take Chu Fengyan as his disciple. You think you can take him as your disciple? Our Tianjue Hall will also take such a genius. Tianjue Hall is nothing. This kid's swordsmanship is so amazing. Of course, our 9-sword hall will take him. Some hall masters and elders had already started to quarrel. They were all waiting. After Chu Fengyan failed, they would run up to Chu Fengyan and ask him to be their disciple. 50th floor. It seems that without using the Battle Dragon spell, this is my limit. Chu Fengyan looked at the shadow in front of him and thought to himself. He had reached here by relying on his own strength, swordsmanship, and body movement. He had not activated the bloodline of the ancient Battle Dragon. Now, if he wanted to take another step forward, he could no longer hide the Battle Dragon spell. Fight, Chu Fengyan said in his heart. The ancient Battle Dragon bloodline in his body was already boiling. From Chu Fengyan's body, a huge amount of spiritual power was crazily accumulating and began to erupt. Seeing the spiritual power erupting from Chu Fengyan's body, countless elders were stunned. Chu Fengyan still has a trump card. Is this kid a monster? Look at him. Is he going to break through to a higher level? Some elders said in a daze. Chu Fengyan did not look timid at all. The result of 50th floor was definitely an astronomical figure for an ordinary warrior. However, Chu Fengyan was still not satisfied. How could such a result be worthy of Chu Fengyan? He, Chu Fengyan, was going to become the emperor of the 9 regions in the future. He was going to challenge the 7 major sects in the future. 50th floor was too little for Chu Fengyan. Dragon fighting in the wild. Chu Fengyan's figure abruptly rushed towards that illusory figure. In his hand, a dragon pattern also condensed on the blade of the dark green sword. Now, Chu Fengmian's ancient battle dragon bloodline was enough to affect his swordsmanship. The dragon power of the ancient battle dragon merged with Chu Fengmian's sword intent. Chapter 121. Dragon's Roar. This is a pure dragon's roar. This brat swordsmanship is actually able to trigger a dragon's roar. A dragon's roar from the sword. This brat actually has a dragon's might. Where did he come from? The Hall Master of Battle Hall looked at Chu Fengmian and muttered to himself. Dragon's might. Dragons were the symbol of nobility in the world. They represented supreme power. In the 9 regions, geniuses were known as dragons among men. And now, Chu Fengmian actually triggered a dragon's roar the moment he drew his sword. This was simply something that had never happened in the Martial Victory Academy. This brat will definitely be the true hope of our Martial Victory Academy in the future. Even Ling Tian is nothing compared to him. The Hall Master of Battle Hall thought firmly. This brat must be pulled into our battle hall. This way, the next dean will most likely be someone from our battle hall. The Hall Master of Battle Hall was not the only one who had such thoughts. The Hall Master of Martial Hall and Hall Master of Battle Hall were also thinking the same thing. They wanted to pull Chu Fengmian into their academy at all costs. Roar. With a dragon's roar, Chu Fengmian's sword moved. His sword aura was like a real dragon. It rushed towards the illusory figure and opened its bloody mouth to devour it. That illusory figure was almost unable to react before it was devoured by the sword aura dragon. Boom! The illusory figure on the 50th floor was also destroyed by Chu Fengmian. So terrifying. Is this Chu Fengmian's true strength? So Chu Fengmian was still hiding his strength. The illusory figure of the 3rd level Divine Sea Realm was easily killed by Chu Fengmian. The current Chu Fengmian looked completely different from before. This was Chu Fengmian's true strength. Everything before was just Chu Fengmian's concealment. 51st floor. After defeating the illusory figure, Chu Fengmian once again advanced towards the 51st floor. Now that the 3 drops of ancient war dragon's blood essence had been activated in Chu Fengmian's body, he wanted to see. How far could he go with these 3 drops of ancient war dragon's blood essence? The illusory figure on the 51st floor looked at Chu Fengmian and whispered, I'm really surprised that you can reach this place. Enough nonsense. Let's fight. Chu Fengmian looked at the shadow and didn't say anything. The sword in his hand moved again. A sharp killing intent surrounded the tip of the sword. This killing intent was so dense that it made people feel as if they were about to be destroyed. Boom! When the sword passed, people died. The illusory figure on the 51st floor was still killed by Chu Fengmian's sword. Chu Fengmian killed all the phantoms on the 52nd and 53rd floors. Currently, he had already reached the 60th floor. But this time, what Chu Fengmian had to face was a shadow at the 4th level of the Spirit Sea Realm. The entire place was dead silent. No one dared to guess the result of Chu Fengmian's battle because they had been wrong countless times. Chu Fengmian was simply not a person who could play cards according to common sense. Leaping 6 levels to fight was simply an impossible thing. However, anything was possible when it came to Chu Fengmian. 5 elements spirit transformation. The projection of the 60th level roared furiously in front of Chu Fengmian. 5 element spirits were formed at the same time. The power of a shadow at the 4th level of the Spirit Sea Realm was several times more terrifying than that of a shadow at the 3rd level of the Spirit Sea Realm. These 5 elements spirits all had the power of the 4th level of the Spirit Sea Realm. It was almost the same as Chu Fengmian facing the siege of 5 warriors at the 4th level of the Spirit Sea Realm at the same time. Boom! He felt a huge pressure from Chu Fengmian. It was as if this pressure was going to crush him. Little guy, give up. You're already very good to have reached this step. The illusionary figure shook his head and said, it was already surprising that there was a genius like Chu Fengmian in this remote country. But reaching the 60th floor was already the limit. It was impossible for him to go further. Seeing that Chu Fengmian was suppressed, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. Chu Fengmian would be defeated one day. Chu Fengmian is finally going to be defeated. The 60th floor. I'm afraid that our Martial Victory Academy won't be able to break this record in 100 years. Although Chu Fengmian was going to be defeated, in everyone's eyes, Chu Fengmian's defeat was already something they could only look up to. Challenging the 60th floor and being defeated. Not to mention that Chu Fengmian was just a newcomer. Even some of the inner disciples or core disciples of the Martial Victory Academy might not be able to reach this height. This kind of achievement was already envied by countless warriors. A middle-aged man slowly walked out from the crowd and stopped in front of the giant tower. He looked at Chu Fengmian and shouted, "Brother Chu Fengmian, let's go." Chu Fengmian, whether you win or lose this battle, our martial hall welcomes you at any time. The hall master of martial hall shouted. This sentence was like a clap of thunder that exploded in everyone's heart. Everyone's eyes fell on the hall master of martial hall. Hall master of martial hall, Wu Sangxiong. Martial hall. It was one of the 3 great halls of the Martial Victory Academy and one of the strongest factions of the Martial Victory Academy. It was the place that countless disciples of the Martial Victory Academy dreamed of joining. Now, the hall master of martial hall, Wu Sangxiong, had actually taken the initiative to extend an olive branch to Chu Fengmian. Apart from shock, many people's eyes were also filled with jealousy. Without any hesitation, the Martial Hall could be said to be the place that all the disciples of the Martial Victory Academy dreamed of entering. The Martial Hall did not recruit disciples on a normal day. Only disciples with extremely high aptitude who took the initiative to participate in the Martial Hall's assessment could enter. Not long ago, the Hall Master of Martial Hall, Wu Sangxiong, had actually taken the initiative to extend an olive branch to this newcomer. Although Chu Fengmian had offended the family Chu and the Chung family, which were hot potatoes, if Chu Fengmian really joined the Martial Hall, the family Chu and the Chung family would definitely seek revenge. The Chu clan and the Chung clan wouldn't dare to take revenge on Chu Fengmian. Even these 2 great clans wouldn't dare to confront the Martial Arts Hall directly. That was because the Martial Arts Hall represented the true ancient and powerful strength of the Martial Victory Institute. It represented the foundation and prosperity of the Martial Victory Academy. Being able to join the Martial Hall would truly be a meteoric rise for Chu Fengmian. Before the crowd could recover from their shock, 2 more middle-aged men walked out from the crowd. Chapter 122. The Hall Master of the Battle Hall, Zhan Fengyan. The Hall Master of the Battle Hall, Zhan Tianwei. Among the crowd, almost everyone stared blankly at the 2 middle-aged men who had walked out. Wu Sangxiong, the Hall Master of the Martial Hall, was not the only one who came. The other 2 Hall Masters of the other 2 halls had also appeared. Brother Wu, Chu Fengmian hasn't come out yet. Isn't it a little too fast for you to make a decision? Zhan Fengyan teased Wu Sangxiong. He turned his head and shouted at Chu Fengmian, who was still on the path to heaven. Chu Fengmian, our battle hall also welcomes you to join us. Zhan Fengyan had just finished speaking when Do Tianwei shouted. Chu Fengmian, our battle hall is also willing to invite you to join us. Our battle hall is willing to provide you with a spot to become a core disciple in the future. Crazy, seeing that the 3 hall masters had taken the initiative to invite a newcomer. The martial artists' eyes almost fell out of their sockets. Since when did these 3 arrogant hall masters take the initiative to invite a new martial artist? Especially when they promised Chu Fengmian some benefits. A spot to become a core disciple. In the Wu Sheng Academy, the inner disciples were not the highest. There was another kind of existence above the inner disciples, and that was the core disciples. The core disciples were the most important people to nurture in the Wu Sheng Academy. In the Wu Sheng Academy, the core disciples were almost all nurtured as the next dean. Even if the core disciples could not become the next dean, they would at least become elders in the future. There were only a dozen core disciples in the entire Wu Sheng Academy. Only the strongest forces in the Wu Sheng Academy would have a spot to become a core disciple every 10 years. Do Tianwei's promise to Chu Fengmian meant that he was betting the prosperity of the battle hall for the next 10 years on Chu Fengmian. Countless jealous, shocked, surprised, and envious gazes looked at Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian was the only one in the academy who could receive such an honor. Many elders and hall masters were originally interested in Chu Fengmian, but when they heard the three hall masters' words, they understood. Chu Fengmian would definitely not be theirs. However, none of them chose to leave because they wanted to see how far Chu Fengmian could go. Was the 60th floor Chu Fengmian's limit? Give up. On the heavenly path, the shadow looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly, "To be able to reach this step is already an unparalleled honor for you. Give up." Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold. In his previous life, he didn't even have the strength to make a choice. In this life, how could he give up? Did you really think that your oppressive might would be able to suppress this Chu? A cold smile appeared on Chu Fengmian's face. Endless battle intent burst out from his eyes. Invincible battle dragon. The bloodline of the ancient war dragon boiled crazily in Chu Fengmian's body, compressing the power within. On Chu Fengmian's body, waves of spiritual energy were still rising crazily. As a result, his body, which was originally suppressed, actually began to move again. The ancient war dragons would never be defeated. If they were defeated, they would rather die. "Break from me." Chu Fengmian clenched his teeth and roared, and a burst of crazy spiritual power emerged on Chu Fengmian's sword. The sword flashed, and the oppressive might was forcibly torn open, allowing Chu Fengmian's suppressed body to immediately find a chance to escape. "Die." Chu Fengmian moved his feet and suddenly rushed up to the shadow. The shadow did not expect Chu Fengmian to burst out such a terrifying power in an instant, and retreated in a panic. A beam of sword light had already pierced through his body. The shadow was shattered. The 60th floor still could not stop Chu Fengmian. "This kid is terrifying." Wu Zhangxiong looked at Chu Fengmian breaking through the 60th floor, and his expression was almost blank. Since when did a newcomer have such terrifying strength? Chu Fengmian was not only terrifying in his strength, but also in his battle intent. This kind of undefeated battle intent was the most terrifying thing about Chu Fengmian. The 61st floor, the 62nd floor. In 2 hours, Chu Fengmian had already reached the 70th floor. During this period, Chu Fengmian almost did not have any rest, and only swallowed some elixirs to forcefully endure it. Could it be that this kid's spiritual energy is limitless? He can recover his spiritual power just by swallowing some elixirs without any rest. Countless people were shocked when they saw Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had the divine pulse, and his spiritual power was almost infinite, so he did not need to replenish any spiritual power at all. Those elixirs that Chu Fengmian swallowed were specially made to deceive others. Otherwise, Chu Fengmian would not even need to swallow those elixirs. The 70th floor is my current limit. Chu Fengmian reached the 70th floor, and he understood in his heart. This was already his limit. Now, Chu Fengmian had squeezed 3 drops of the ancient war dragon's blood essence to the limit, and only then did he pass the 69th floor. The 70th floor was completely different from the 69th floor, and unless Chu Fengmian exposed all his trump cards, he would not be able to pass it. This number is already enough to shock the Wusheng Academy. Chu Fengmian revealed a smile at the corner of his mouth. What he did not know was that when Chu Fengmian was breaking through the heavenly path, countless people were already shocked outside. Bang! After reaching the 70th floor, Chu Fengmian was defeated in almost an instant, and he was sent flying out of the 10,000 feet tall tower. Seeing that Chu Fengmian was defeated, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. If Chu Fengmian had not been defeated, they might really think that Chu Fengmian might have passed the heavenly path. The heavenly path had existed since the establishment of the Wusheng Academy. For thousands of years, countless geniuses and experts had passed all 100 floors, but none of them had really passed all 100 floors. Because of this, there were countless rumors that said that if one passed the heavenly path, he would regret it and obtain countless benefits. Although Chu Fengmian had been defeated, he was able to reach the 70th floor as a newcomer. In the future, when Chu Fengmian matured in the Wusheng Academy, he might really become the most promising person to pass the heavenly path. The moment Chu Fengmian was sent flying, a jade bottle fell into Chu Fengmian's hand. Through the jade bottle, Chu Fengyan could feel an extremely strong medicinal power. A heaven-grade, lower-grade elixir. Seeing the mist-like elixir, Chu Fengyan's face showed some joy. Chapter 123. A heaven-grade elixir. Everyone looked at the jade bottle in Chu Fengyan's hand with unconcealable greed in their eyes. Not only some of the disciples, but many home masters and elders also had greed in their eyes. Chu Fengyan was able to reach the 70th floor in one go. Everyone knew that the reward from the heavenly path would not be small. But when they saw the heaven-grade elixir, many of them went crazy. A heaven-grade elixir was extremely rare even in the 9 prefectures. It had not appeared in the victorious martial country for thousands of years. The heaven-grade elixir in Chu Fengyan's hand was probably the only one in the victorious martial country for thousands of years. Giving a heaven-grade elixir to a little guy like you is a waste of God's gift. Give it to me. The moment Chu Fengyan left the giant tower, an arrogant voice descended from the sky. A huge arm fell from the sky and grabbed the jade bottle in Chu Fengyan's hand. It was actually trying to snatch the heaven-grade elixir from Chu Fengyan. Sneak attack. Chu Fengyan did not expect that during the assessment, in front of so many elders and hall masters of the victorious martial academy, someone would sneak attack him. Someone actually dared to sneak attack him. Phantom. In an instant, Chu Fengyan's figure moved. Only an afterimage was left behind on the spot. His figure had already moved to the side and hurriedly dodged. Boom! What the giant palm grabbed was only an illusory figure. This sudden sneak attack was barely dodged by Chu Fengyan using the phantom body technique. But Chu Fengyan's heart still had lingering fear. Fortunately, Chu Fengyan's reaction was extremely fast. In addition, Chu Fengyan was different from ordinary warriors. He had the divine pulse, and his spiritual energy was almost endless. Even after a battle, he could react at any time. If it were other warriors, they would have been extremely weak after coming out of the heavenly path. It was impossible for them to have Chu Fengyan's spiritual energy to resist. This sneak attack was extremely terrifying. No warrior would have thought that someone would dare to sneak attack in front of so many hall masters and elders of the victorious martial academy. If it weren't for Chu Fengyan's quick reaction, not only would the celestial elixir in his hand have been snatched away, but this palm strike would also be enough to kill Chu Fengyan. The speed and power of this palm was extremely strong. It was probably enough to contend against the ancient dragon turtle. It was an attack from a peak wind resisting realm ancient martial art practitioner. Who is it? How dare you launch a sneak attack during the assessment? Get out here! Wu Cangxiong, Zhan Fengyun, and Dou Tianwei roared at the same time. 3 streams of terrifying spiritual qi burst out crazily. Launching a sneak attack during Wu Sheng Academy's assessment, especially in front of the 3 of them, was simply a slap to their faces. Chu Fengyan was a peerless genius, and they all wanted to rope him in. They never thought that there would be someone who wanted to kill Chu Fengyan. If it hadn't been for Chu Fengyan's quick reaction, he would have been killed by that palm. Ha ha! Hall masters, there's no need to be angry. This sovereign was just joking with this little fellow. A surge of spiritual energy erupted. With a loud boom, the sky shattered and a figure walked out from the sky. The figure wasn't tall, but anyone who saw it felt as if they were looking at a high and mighty ruler. It had an innate, terrifying aura. Crown Prince, Zhi Lingtian. Countless martial art practitioners cried out in alarm when they saw the figure. The person who launched the sneak attack was none other than the #1 genius of Wu Sheng Academy, the Crown Prince, Zhi Lingtian. It's really him. Chu Fengyan secretly circulated all the spiritual energy in his body and the power of the 5 drops of ancient battle dragon blood essence. Ling Tian's strength was at the peak of the wind-controlling realm. If Chu Fengyan had not displayed the phantom body technique, the palm just now would have been enough to kill Chu Fengyan. However, such a body technique could only be used once in front of Zhi Lingtian. The second time, Zhi Lingtian had learned his lesson. Even if Chu Fengyan used the phantom body technique, it would be useless. Chu Fengyan knew that Zhi Lingtian wouldn't let him break his record so easily. However, Chu Fengyan didn't expect Zhi Lingtian to be so arrogant. He actually dared to launch a sneak attack during the assessment, especially in front of the three hall masters. Zhi Lingtian, you must give us an explanation today. Do you think that the Saint Hall is invincible in Wusheng Academy? Wu Sanxiong looked at Zhi Lingtian and said angrily. He was also a high and mighty existence in Wusheng Academy. Now that Zhi Lingtian dared to challenge his prestige, he was furious. That's right, Zhi Lingtian. Although you are a core disciple and highly regarded by the dean, you have crossed the line today. Zhan Fengyan also said angrily. Although Zhi Lingtian was strong, the three hall masters weren't afraid of him. Zhi Lingtian, if you don't give us an explanation today, don't think that you can leave safely. Dou Tianwei shouted angrily. Today, Zhi Lingtian dared to launch a sneak attack during the assessment, which was a slap to everyone's face. The elders and hall masters didn't dare to go against Zhi Lingtian. However, the three hall masters were different. Give you an explanation? No one dares to ask me for an explanation when I do something. Zhi Lingtian's face was filled with arrogance as he spoke. Three hall masters, I know that the three of you are at the peak of the Imperial Wind Realm. However, the three of you are not enough to stop me. Zhi Lingtian laughed. Everyone present was stunned by Zhi Lingtian's arrogance. Zhi Lingtian dared to say such arrogant words in front of the three hall masters. It was as if he didn't put the three hall masters in his eyes. Arrogant boy, do you think that you are a saint? Do you think that you can fight against the three of us alone? The three hall masters roared at the same time. Three powerful spiritual energies rushed towards Zhi Lingtian at the same time. Martial arts under the heavens. Undefeatable. Martial arts under the heavens. Three powerful spiritual energies rushed towards Zhi Lingtian at the same time. The three hall masters attacked at the same time. The power that erupted was terrifying to the extreme. A bunch of old men. Do you really think that you can stop me? Infinite great Tao, break for me. Zhi Lingtian laughed maniacally as he also unleashed a wave of spiritual energy. This wave of spiritual energy was actually no weaker than the combined power of the three hall masters. The Crown Prince's strength has reached such a level. Chapter 124. The three of you can't do anything to me. I'm going to get the heaven-grade elixir today. Zhi Lingtian laughed maniacally and ignored the three hall masters. A figure rushed towards Chu Fengyan. One of his hands was covered in the color of chaos, as if it contained some kind of mystical power. Get over here for me. Zhi Lingtian's hand grabbed at Chu Fengyan, and Chu Fengyan felt a supreme suction force, as if his flesh and blood were going to be sucked out. Heavenly Pivot Absorption Technique. Seeing Zhi Lingtian's move, Chu Fengyan suddenly thought of something. Zhi Lingtian's technique was actually from Heavenly Pivot Hall, one of the 7 major sections. Chu Fengyan had a lot of dealings with the 7 major sects in his previous life, so he was naturally familiar with the techniques of Heavenly Pivot Hall. It was no wonder that Zhi Lingtian's strength was so terrifying that he could contend with the 3 hall masters by himself. The technique he practiced was from Heavenly Pivot Hall. In this remote Wusheng country, a person who practiced the techniques of the 7 major sects was naturally invincible. Boy, aren't you extremely talented? Are you so arrogant that you want to break my record? Today, I'll kill you and let those people see the consequences of challenging me. Zhi Lingtian's face was ferocious, and he shouted at Chu Fengyan. His eyes were filled with killing intent, and he rushed towards Chu Fengyan with a strong burst of spiritual energy. Today, he not only wanted to snatch the heaven-grade elixir from Chu Fengyan's hands, but also to kill him. Sword! Chu Fengyan's expression was calm. Even in front of Zhi Lingtian, Chu Fengyan's expression was still calm. Chu Fengyan held the black azure sword tightly. Ha ha ha! A little guy in the body-refining realm actually wants to resist. Looking at Chu Fengyan's action, Zhi Lingtian laughed disdainfully. Even if you resist, you'll die. Zhi Lingtian moved his hand and grabbed at Chu Fengyan. At the same time, layers of space had overlapped around him, surrounding Chu Fengyan and Zhi Lingtian. In this way, it was impossible for the 3 hall masters to save him. In this layer of space, Chu Fengyan and Ji Lingtian were separated. Outsiders couldn't see what was happening inside. Perfect. Chu Fengyan's lips curled into a strange smile. Since that's the case, there's no need for me to hold back. A little fellow at the body refinement realm wants to overturn the heavens? Ji Lingtian looked at Chu Fengyan and laughed. A supreme sword intent was almost at his chest. The sword, almost silently, pierced into Ji Lingtian's chest. The sword was so fast that people could not see it clearly. Peak of sword intent. Limitless sword. Chu Fengyan coldly spat out 2 sentences. A sharp sword essence had completely erupted from his body. The peak of sword intent. It was the realm that all sword cultivators in the world dreamed of, the pinnacle of swordsmanship. This level of sword was something that many sword cultivators could not achieve, but it was displayed by Chu Fengyan today. What? Ji Lingtian's face was completely frozen. The pain of the sword piercing his chest had already spread. Bang! He waved his hand, and suddenly Chu Fengyan's body was sent flying. At the same time, a blood mark was left on Ji Lingtian's chest. No, the strength of this body is still too weak. Chu Fengyan's eyes were a little hazy. This sword did not kill Ji Lingtian. Chu Fengyan had already used the peak of sword intent, but this sword did not pierce through Ji Lingtian's heart. Chu Fengyan's strength was still not enough. If Chu Fengyan's strength was a little stronger, Ji Lingtian's sword would definitely kill him. But now Chu Fengyan's sword failed. Chu Fengyan was in danger. Little bastard, how dare you hurt me? He felt the pain in his chest. Ji Lingtian roared angrily. His anger had gone to his head. He could not imagine that he, a warrior at the peak of the wind-controlling realm, would be hurt by a warrior at the body-refining realm. I want you to die. Ji Lingtian, this is not the place for you to behave atrociously. Get out. Ji Lingtian did not make another move. The layers of space around him had been easily broken. An old voice suddenly sounded. A white-haired old man had appeared in front of Chu Fengyan. Hearing this old voice, Chu Fengyan's heart finally calmed down. This white-haired old man was the only saint that Chu Fengyan had noticed before. Now the saint made a move. Chu Fengyan, where did this old guy come from? How dare you go against me? Seeing the white-haired old man standing in front of Chu Fengyan, Ji Lingtian roared crazily. Once upon a time, he was hurt by a warrior at the body-refining realm. This was absolutely a great humiliation for him, who was conceited. Now Ji Lingtian thought that only by killing Chu Fengyan could he wash away his humiliation. This boy dares to hurt me. Today he will definitely die. No one can stop him. Ji Lingtian roared and hit Chu Fengyan with his palm again. Hearing Ji Lingtian's words, the white-haired old man's eyes showed some surprise, especially when he saw the wound on Ji Lingtian's chest. His eyes were full of disbelief. A warrior at the body-refining realm could hurt Ji Lingtian, who was at the peak of the wind-controlling realm. But now that this palm was coming, the old man had no time to think about it. The old man waved his hand, and suddenly Ji Lingtian's palm was easily dissolved. Even Ji Lingtian's body was forced to retreat hundreds of feet. What? The crown prince was forced to retreat. The eyes of the disciples of the Saint Hall below widened when they saw Ji Lingtian being forced to retreat. They couldn't believe that the invincible crown prince, who had single-handedly fought against 3 sect masters, would actually be pushed back 300 meters by an old man with a single wave of his hand. The strength of these 2 people was not above the same level. Xianbei Saint. Greetings, Xianbei Saint. Seeing the old man, the 3 hall masters hurriedly bowed their heads and greeted him respectfully. Hearing the 3 hall masters' words, the crowd realized the old man's identity. This old man was actually a saint. Xianbei Saint. Ji Lingtian's face changed rapidly. Hearing the word saint, his fighting spirit in his heart faded by half. A saint was a terrifying warrior in the divine power realm. No matter how arrogant Ji Lingtian was, he would not dare to fight against a saint. Humph, let's go. Ji Lingtian made a prompt decision. He turned around and left directly. He could only accept this loss. With Xianbei Saint here, it was impossible for him to kill Chu Fengyan. Damn Chu Fengyan and Xianbei Saint. When I break through to the divine power realm, each of you will die. Chapter 125. Chu Fengmian's sword had already pierced through Zhi Lingtian's spiritual meridian, so he needed time to recover. Stop! Go after him! When the three hall masters saw that Zhi Lingtian was about to leave, they all wanted to chase after him. However, they were all stopped by Saint Xianbei. Let him go, Xianbei's saint said calmly. Yes. The three hall masters did not dare to refute Xianbei's saint's words. Xianbei's saint turned to look at Chu Fengmian and suddenly said, Junior, are you willing to be my disciple? This sentence caused the three hall masters who were about to say something to shut their mouths. They wanted to take Chu Fengmian as their disciple, but none of them dared to say anything when they heard Xianbei's saint's words. Even if the three hall masters had more guts, they would not dare to compete with Xianbei's saint for a disciple. Xianbei's saint was one of the supreme existences in Wuxing Academy. His status was not lower than the dean of Wuxing Academy. Xianbei's saint had always lived alone and did not have any disciples. They did not expect Xianbei's saint to come here to take Chu Fengmian as his disciple. Junior, are you willing? Xianbei's saint asked with a smile. I'm willing. Chu Fengmian answered hurriedly. It was better to be a disciple of a saint than to join any other hall. He came to Wuxing Academy to join one of the three halls. Now that he could be a disciple of Xianbei's saint, it would be beneficial for him. With Xianbei's saint's support, Chu Fengmian was not worried that Zhi Lingtian would take revenge on him. Well, take this wooden token. From now on, you're my first personal disciple, Xianbei's saint said with a smile. Let's go. I'll take you to the place where you'll cultivate in the future. Xianbei's saint grabbed Chu Fengmian and lifted him up. Chu Fengmian felt that Xianbei's saint did not have any ill intentions and did not resist. He was brought into the space by Xianbei's saint. The two figures quickly disappeared from where they stood. Only countless dumbfounded people were left behind. Chu Fengmian is a disciple of Xianbei's saint? A saint? Chu Fengmian has actually become a saint's disciple. This brat is really lucky. Now that Saint Xianbei thinks highly of him, who would dare to go against Chu Fengmian in the future? Countless martial artists chatted, their voices filled with envy and jealousy. Even many elders and hall masters were extremely jealous. That was a saint, a supreme saint. Not to mention being accepted as a disciple by a saint. Even if they were to become servants, it would be extremely beneficial for them to be able to receive a single instruction from a saint. The news of Chu Fengmian being taken away as a disciple by Saint Xianbei had spread throughout Wuxing Academy in just a day. Damn it, that old fellow Xianbei saint has indeed taken a fancy to this kid. The crown prince, Ling Tian, had just returned to the Saint Hall when he heard the news. Every word he spoke was accompanied by the sound of him gnashing his teeth. Being injured by Chu Fengmian was definitely a humiliation in his life. Moreover, Chu Fengmian's talent had already made him feel jealous. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken the risk to kill Chu Fengmian. However, he didn't expect Saint Xianbei to stop all of this. I must kill this little bastard. If I don't kill him, I, Ling Tian, am not a man. Ling Tian roared crazily. Man, Crown Prince. A few St. Hall martial artists hurried in and knelt on the ground. Find a chance to kill Chu Fengmian. No matter how talented he is, he's just a body-refining realm martial artist. It shouldn't be difficult to kill him. Ling Tian said viciously. With his arrogant character, he had always been the #1 genius in Wuxing Academy. Now that he had met Chu Fengmian, who had surpassed him, Ling Tian's heart was filled with jealousy. He couldn't wait to kill Chu Fengmian and tear him into pieces. Crown Prince, Chu Fengmian is now Saint Xianbei's disciple. Shouldn't we be more careful when dealing with him? If Saint Xianbei gets angry, we won't be able to stop him. A dark-skinned man said. He was young Master D, one of the core members of Saint Hall. Now that he heard Ling Tian's words, he frowned and said, Chu Fengmian was indeed nothing. However, if Saint Xianbei was behind Chu Fengmian, it would be a different story. With Saint Xianbei's protection, even if the entire Saint Hall went up against Chu Fengmian, they might not be able to hurt him. So what if he's Saint Xianbei? I've met with the dean recently, and the dean has confirmed that I'll be the next dean. Even if we kill Chu Fengmian, Saint Xianbei won't dare to go against Saint Hall. We can only suffer in silence. Ling Tian said with a cold smile on his face. Can Saint Xianbei stay by Chu Fengmian's side forever? When Chu Fengmian is alone, we'll find a chance to kill him. If this little bastard doesn't die, he'll be a big threat. Yes. Countless Saint Hall martial artists echoed in unison. On the other side, the family Chu and the Chung family had a similar conversation. Xianbei Saint is a saint. How can he protect Chu Fengmian forever? We'll find a chance to kill Chu Fengmian when he leaves the Saint Hall. Even if we can't kill him, he won't have a good time in Wuxing Academy. So what if he's Saint Xianbei? It's not like Chung family doesn't have a saint in family Chu. Let the little guys from Green Alliance find a chance to deal with Chu Fengmian. Even if Chu Fengmian is talented, he's just a newcomer. How strong can he be? Xianbei's saint won't be able to interfere in the conflict between the disciples. The entire Wuxing Academy was shaken. Xianbei's saint brought Chu Fengmian to a courtyard at the top of the mountain. This was where Xianbei's saint's palace was located. There were only 3 auras in the huge palace, including Chu Fengmian. Only an old servant of Xianbei Saint was in charge of cleaning the place every day. Congratulations, Master, for having a great disciple. The old servant looked at Xianbei Saint with a smile on his wrinkled face. You'll be in charge of teaching him the most basic rules. Xianbei Saint glanced at the old servant and said. Then his body flashed and he left. Only Chu Fengmian and the old servant were left in the huge courtyard. Chapter 126. How should I address you, senior? Chu Fengmian looked at the old servant and asked. The old servant looked ordinary, but Chu Fengmian could see that the old servant's spiritual energy was no less than that of the 3 hall masters. In terms of strength, he could even fight with Ling Tian. Chu Fengmian dared not be arrogant in front of such a powerful person. My name is Chun Zhou. If you don't mind, you can call me by my name. Chun Zhou said with a smile. All right, I'll call you Elder Chun from now on. Chu Fengmian said respectfully. Chun Zhou was a servant in front of the Xianbei Saint, but he was a powerful person in front of Chu Fengmian. A powerful person deserved Chu Fengmian's respect. You're too polite, young master, Chun Zhou said with a smile. He looked at Chu Fengmian and could see that Chu Fengmian was not faking it. Generally, disciples from big forces were extremely arrogant. Chu Fengmian's personality left a good impression on him. Young Master is currently busy dealing with some matters in the academy. Therefore, this old servant will replace Master and teach young Master some things. Shinzo looked at Chu Fengmian and said slowly, even though young Master has already come under Master's command, Master's teaching style is different from that of ordinary elders and hall masters. Master will not restrict or interfere with young Master's actions. He will only provide sufficient resources for young Master's cultivation. Young Master, you've just entered the academy, so there are some rules that you may not know. All inner disciples are required to complete a task after entering the academy. Task. Chu Fengmian was puzzled. There were indeed missions in Wuxing Academy. However, generally speaking, only the outer disciples would be assigned missions. The inner disciples did not seem to have such a rule. That's right, Chun Zhou said with a smile. This mission is actually just a small test. It's to prevent the sect elders from saying that the inner disciples are idlers. All inner disciples are required to complete a task when they enter the academy. Then they're not required to take any more tasks. As long as they contribute to the academy, those stubborn elders will be too embarrassed to gossip. I see. Chu Fengmian nodded. He also understood the meaning behind Chun Zhou's words. Inner sect disciples, although it was said that this was to allow them to cultivate wholeheartedly, so they would not be given any tasks. After all, inner sect disciples still relied on the academy's resources. If they did not contribute at all to the academy, there would still be some stubborn old fellows who would gossip at the side. Therefore, in order to avoid trouble, there was an unspoken rule. When an inner disciple entered the sect, they had to accept and complete a mission. As long as he contributed to the sect, those old fogies wouldn't say anything. Master has always disdained to pay attention to such matters, but for the sake of young Master's peace, it's best to accept a mission and complete it. This old servant has already selected a mission and will now hand it over to young master. Chunzo took out a jade slip and handed it to Chu Fengmian. Although this person is a little dangerous for the young lord, it's enough. This mission was actually chosen by master as well. It could be considered a test for young master. When young master is done with this character, master should return. Chunzo glanced at Chu Fengmian and said, "This mission has a time limit of 1 month. After a month, if young master does not return, master will expel young master from the sect. Young master, please bear this in mind." "Thank you for the reminder, Elder Chun." Chu Fengmian nodded respectfully. This reminder should be added by Chunzo himself. With Xianbei Saint's character, he should not take the initiative to remind Chu Fengmian. However, as long as the character was not too difficult, Chu Fengmian was confident that he could easily solve it within a month. Chu Fengmian took the jade slip and opened it. There was only a faint sentence in it. "Sand bandits are rampant in the northwest desert. Chu Fengmian wants to help the Sand King to eliminate all the sand bandits in one fell swoop." Eliminate the sand bandits? Chu Fengmian frowned when he saw this mission. Sand bandits were everywhere in the northwest desert. These sand bandits lived in the desert and often came out to plunder the surrounding cities, then fled back to the desert. Originally, it was just a group of sand bandits. Some experts in victorious Wu country chose to suppress and kill them. However, after a long time, the sand bandits were not killed. In fact, their numbers were increasing. They had expanded to 10,000 people and established a new country on their own, becoming a country within a country. The experts in victorious Wu country had no choice but to report this matter to victorious Wu Academy, asking them to send people to deal with the sand bandits. In a vast desert, ordinary warriors could not do anything to the sand bandits. Master's test for me is really not simple. Chu Fengmian looked at the reward written on the jade slip and muttered to himself. The reward for eliminating the sand bandits was a total of 2,000 contribution points. Generally, the victorious Wu Academy's missions were only worth 100 to 200 contribution points. The more difficult missions were only worth 1,000 contribution points. This mission actually had a reward of 2,000 contribution points. One could imagine how difficult it was. However, each and every one of these sand bandits was extremely fierce. Chu Fengmian killing them was a good deed to punish evil and promote good. "Then, I will leave now," Chu Fengmian said. The sooner this mission was completed, the better. Chu Fengmian did not want to delay any longer. "By the way, Old Chun, where can I exchange these contribution points for items?" Chu Fengmian suddenly stopped and asked Old Chun. He had obtained a considerable amount of contribution points from the assessment. Now that Chu Fengmian wanted to complete the mission, he could use these contribution points to exchange for some useful items. The mission was personally selected by Saint Xianbei, so the difficulty would not be low. Chu Fengmian had to be fully prepared. Exchange contribution points? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Chunzo was stunned for a moment before he smiled. This old man forgot that young master still has quite a lot of contribution points. These contribution points can be exchanged in the contribution hall at the upper level. All right, Chu Fengmian nodded. He took a big step and left without the slightest hesitation. This kid is not bad. Looking at Chu Fengmian's back, Chunzo's eyes revealed a hint of deep meaning. But I don't know if this kid can complete this mission. Master's test might be too difficult. This mission is not as simple as it seems. After Chunzo muttered to himself, he continued to clean the courtyard. Contribution Hall. Chapter 127. The Contribution Hall was the most important place in Wu Sheng Academy. The prosperity of Wu Sheng Academy was inseparable from the contribution points. The treasures that were contributed from countless regions in Wu Sheng Nation would be placed in the Contribution Hall. The disciples of Wu Sheng Academy could use their contribution points to exchange for some of the items. There were two ways to obtain contribution points. The first way was to complete missions to obtain contribution points. Completing missions would bring great benefits to the academy, and the contribution points were considered as rewards. The other way was to sell valuable items to the contribution hall. Not only could the contribution hall exchange for treasures, but it could also exchange items for contribution points. Of course, the price charged would be much lower than the exchange price. However, there was no third way to obtain contribution points in Wusheng Academy. Hence, in order to accumulate contribution points, many disciples would sell their items to the contribution hall. The contribution hall could also profit from the difference in price. Now, Chu Fengmian had the 10,000 contribution points that he had obtained from the previous ARC assessment, as well as the 13,000 contribution points that he had obtained from exchanging monster cores for the second assessment. A total of 23,000 contribution points. This was a considerable amount of wealth. This wealth was equivalent to the wealth of 2 Lin mansions. In some remote places, it was enough to make one a wealthy person. Stop right there. Just as Chu Fengmian entered the contribution hall, a thunderous roar sounded from the side. He turned his head around and saw a few strong men walking over from the side. These people were all dressed in red, which represented their status. They were members of the enforcement team. In Wusheng Academy, the enforcement team was one of the major powers. The enforcement team was usually patrolling the academy to maintain the academy's rules. Most of the enforcement team members were the elders of the outer sect. Their aptitude was not enough to be promoted to the inner sect, but their strength was not bad. Even though joining the enforcement team would waste some of their cultivation time, they could still benefit from it. What's the matter? Chu Fengmian looked at the group of enforcement team members and asked calmly. These enforcement team members were around the peak of the body refining realm. In Chu Fengmian's opinion, they would be easy to deal with. However, the enforcement team members had the right to supervise the other disciples. Chu Fengmian did not want to get into a conflict with them. Nothing. It's just that you seem a little unfamiliar. A disciple of the law enforcement team sized up Chu Fengmian with a greedy look in his eyes. Our disciplinary squad patrols the academy every day, and it's extremely tiring for us. As a freshman, shouldn't you contribute some money to the academy? Chu Fengmian guessed their intentions upon seeing the arrival of the law enforcement team. These disciples of the law enforcement team would often use their law enforcement authority to demand wealth from other disciples. This was especially true for ordinary newcomers. After all, newcomers had just entered the academy and were unwilling to have conflicts with others. Thus, they usually settled things with money. It seemed that this group of law enforcement disciples could see that Chu Fengmian looked unfamiliar, so they wanted to ask for some benefits from him. This is a gift. Thank you for your hard work. Chu Fengmian was too lazy to argue with this group of people. He casually took out a bottle of energy-gathering pills from his storage bag and tossed it at the leader of the enforcement team. This amount of wealth was nothing to Chu Fengmian, and he was too lazy to bother. Oh, seeing how straightforward Chu Fengmian was, the greed in that disciple's eyes grew even more. He held the bottle of energy-gathering pills in his hand and smiled. Junior brother is indeed forthright. However, we have more than 10 brothers here. We can't split this bottle of pills. How about this? Junior brother, take out some more pills and give each of us a bottle. Consider it your contribution to the academy. What? Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold when he saw that the disciples of the enforcement team were still unwilling to give up. He had no intention of tangling with this group of law enforcement disciples, but since they wanted to deliberately make things difficult for him, he wouldn't hesitate. Chu Fengmian wasn't afraid of this group of law enforcement disciples. A man who was never content was like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. It seemed that this group of people thought that Chu Fengmian was a pushover. Scram! Chu Fengmian furrowed his brows and roared angrily. He could also see that the disciples of the enforcement team were insatiably greedy, and he wasn't in the mood to tangle with them. Kid, what did you say? The disciple of the enforcement team said with a hint of anger in his eyes. How dare you go against us, the disciples of the enforcement team? It seems like you still don't know how powerful we are. Come, a few of you go and teach this kid a lesson. Take his storage pouch. Since he's unwilling to hand it over, then we'll take it ourselves. A newcomer who just established himself in the academy dares to be so arrogant. It seems like we have to teach him a lesson. Senior brother Feng Qi, let me do it. It's been a long time since I've taught a newcomer who doesn't know his place a lesson. An eagle-beaked martial artist walked out from the crowd and sneered as he sized up Chu Fengmian. Kid, don't think that you're some kind of prodigy outside. Once you're in the Martial Victory Academy, even if you're a dragon, you'll still be coiled up here. As the eagle-beaked martial artist spoke, he suddenly threw a punch at Chu Fengmian. As soon as this punch struck out, it instantly swept out a gust of fierce wind that was sufficient to break a towering tree. If an ordinary martial artist at the 7th level of the body refinement stage were to encounter this punch would probably be able to break a few ribs. Courting death? Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold. He also clenched his fist and threw a punch at the eagle-beaked martial artist. You're just a bunch of dogs raised by the academy. Do you really think you're the master of this academy? Bang! The two fists collided. The eagle-beaked martial artist's arm was twisted into a strange shape. One of his arms had already been broken by Chu Fengmian's punch. This was the result of Chu Fengmian holding back. Otherwise, Chu Fengmian's punch could have killed the eagle-beaked martial artist. What? A newcomer actually has such terrifying strength. Seeing that the eagle-beaked martial artist's arm was broken with a punch, the other disciples of the enforcement team were also shocked. Kid, regardless of your strength, you still dare to injure a disciple of the enforcement team. You actually dared to injure our law enforcement team's disciples. It seems like you really don't put our law enforcement team in your eyes. The leading disciple of the enforcement team said coldly, "Kneel down, hand over your storage pouch, and apologize to us. Then, this matter will be over." Chapter 128. Offend the law enforcement team? Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with disdain. In my opinion, the law enforcement team is nothing but a bunch of dogs raised by the school. I gave you a few bones, and you want more? Extorting disciples every day. Your law enforcement team should have been kicked out of the school long ago. Chu Fengmian sneered at the law enforcement team. He was not afraid at all. Even the St. Hall, the most powerful force in the Academy of Wuxing, hated Chu Fengmian to the bone. How could Chu Fengmian be afraid of offending a law enforcement team? Besides, Chu Fengmian could defeat warriors in the Divine Sea Realm. These law enforcement team disciples were just outer disciples in the body refining realm. In Chu Fengmian's opinion, they could be crushed to death at any time. If they were not in the Academy of Wuxing, those law enforcement team disciples would have been dead by now. Someone dares to have a conflict with the law enforcement team? He is a newcomer. I didn't expect there to be someone so arrogant among the newcomers this year. This guy is courting death. He dares to provoke the law enforcement team. They were outside the contribution hall. The contribution hall was always crowded. The conflict between Chu Fengmian and the law enforcement team attracted the attention of many disciples of the Academy of Wuxing. The law enforcement team had always been avoided by many disciples in the Academy of Wuxing. These law enforcement team disciples had always bullied the weak and feared the strong. They would not offend the real, powerful inner disciples. They only extorted the newcomers, outer disciples, and janitor disciples. Therefore, the real, powerful inner disciples did not bother to pay attention to the law enforcement team. That was why the law enforcement team had survived until now. Unfortunately, the person they met today was Chu Fengmian. If it were someone else, they would have been extorted by the law enforcement team. What? How dare you insult the law enforcement team? The law enforcement team represents the rules of the Academy of Wuxing. You are provoking the Academy of Wuxing. The leader of the law enforcement team said furiously, "Let's go together and teach this guy a lesson. Take him to the torture chamber, break his bones, and let him know the consequences of going against the law enforcement team." More than a dozen law enforcement team disciples attacked at the same time. One after another, martial arts techniques were launched at Chu Fengmian. These law enforcement team disciples were all veterans of the Academy of Wuxing. They were even stronger than some new inner disciples. The law enforcement team disciples. Even a Divine Sea Realm warrior wouldn't be able to deal with more than a dozen law enforcement team disciples. Take me to the torture chamber? Break my bones? Good. Of you. Chu Fengmian's eyes. Of the law enforcement team. With the law enforcement team. With the law enforcement team. With the law. With the law enforcement team. Comma the law enforcement team with. With the law, with the law, with the law enforcement team. with the law enforcement team of the Chu Fengmian looked at the law enforcement disciples who were rushing at the front. He grabbed them with his big hand, and a surge of spiritual power was activated. Those law enforcement disciples were all caught in Chu Fengmian's hand. The force of this smash was comparable to the force of falling from a height of 100 meters, especially when their spiritual powers were all bound by Chu Fengmian. Even a martial artist in the 9th level of the body refining realm would have their bones broken if they couldn't use their spiritual energy. You are so vicious. The law enforcement team disciple looked at the law enforcement team disciples who were taken away. His eyes were filled with fear. He shivered. Chu Fengmian's smash was enough to break all their bones and tendons. They really couldn't stand up anymore. They couldn't even get up, let alone stand. Vicious? If I didn't have the strength, I would be taken to the torture chamber. That would be worse. I'm being merciful, Chu Fengmian said coldly. And you, didn't you want me to kneel down and apologize? Very well then, kneel before me. Chu Fengmian waved his hand. His spiritual energy turned into a strong pressure. It pressed down on the law enforcement team disciple. What? You want me to kneel? Impossible. The law enforcement team disciple felt Chu Fengmian's pressure. He hurriedly used his spiritual energy to resist. But his spiritual energy couldn't compete with Chu Fengmian's. Kneel! Bang! He couldn't resist the strong spiritual energy. His knees went soft, and he knelt on the ground. You guys kneel too. Chu Fengmian looked at the law enforcement team disciples who were trying to run away. He threw a palm at them. Suddenly, the law enforcement team disciples knelt on the ground. In front of Chu Fengmian, a row of law enforcement team disciples knelt. Anyone who saw this scene would be incomparably shocked. The onlookers were also dumbfounded. The lawless enforcers had actually been subdued by a newcomer who had just entered the Martial Victory Academy. They couldn't help but talk about it. This newcomer is so scary. He defeated so many law enforcement team disciples by himself and made them kneel in front of him. He has reached the divine sea realm. Since when can a newcomer have the strength of the divine sea realm? It is said that there is a terrifying genius among this batch of newcomers. His name is Chu Fengmian. He broke the Crown Prince's record. Could it be him? Impossible. Someone can break the Crown Prince's record? That's what the rumors say. But even if it's not true, this guy's strength is terrifying. That move just now is enough to compete with the top 10 experts in the intersect. Not necessarily. The top 10 intersect martial artists all have their own trump cards. Their strength is much more terrifying than what they show. But this guy is at least one of the top 20 intersect martial artists. Chu Fengmian could hear all the discussions going on around him. That move just now isn't in the top 10 of the intersect of the Academy of Wuxing. Chu Fengmian was surprised. Although he didn't use his full strength, he used 30% of his strength. It seemed that the Academy of Wuxing was not as weak as Chu Fengmian thought. Chapter 129. Brat, we admit defeat this time. The leading disciple looked up at Chu Fengmian with a face full of humiliation. It was a great humiliation to be forced to kneel on the ground by Chu Fengmian in front of so many people. The law enforcement team had always been the ones to force others to do things. They had never been forced to such an extent. Damn it. Why go back? I must find someone to kill this brat. Show him who's boss. He thought viciously in his heart, but his expression remained unchanged. He put on a fawning expression. You've beaten us. It's time to let us go. I know you still want to take revenge on me, but let me tell you, don't provoke me. You can't afford to provoke me, Chu Fengmian said with a cold smile. He didn't hide the killing intent in his eyes. This group of law enforcement team disciples was just a group of flies. However, a group of flies could also make people extremely irritated. Yes, Senior is right. The leading disciple of the law enforcement team answered repeatedly. What he was thinking now was how to leave this place as soon as possible. After all, there were more and more people watching. It was too embarrassing for them to kneel here. Want to leave? Chu Fengmian said slowly. Hand over your storage bag and identity card, and you can get lost. What? You want us to hand over our identity card and storage bag? The faces of the law enforcement team, disciples, changed instantly when they heard this. Impossible. Don't even think about it. The identity card and storage bag were the wealth they had accumulated over countless years. How could they hand it over so easily? The leading disciple of the law enforcement team even threatened. Brat, our law enforcement team has some connections with some inner disciples and elders of the academy. Do you really want to shed all pretense of cordiality with our law enforcement team? Are you going to hand it over or not? Chu Fengmian's face was calm, as usual. It was as if he didn't hear the words of the law enforcement team disciples at all. Our law enforcement team can do whatever we want in Wuxing Academy. Our foundation is so deep that you can't imagine it. It's better for everyone to take a step back. The leading disciple of the law enforcement team was still threatening. However, Chu Fengmian's expression remained unchanged. A threat? Chu Fengmian was never afraid of threats. Such threats were only the means of the weak. Since you don't want to hand it over, I'll take it myself. A terrifying pressure suddenly burst out from Chu Fengmian's body. This pressure pressed down on the kneeling law enforcement team disciples on the ground. Chu Fengmian possessed the bloodline of the ancient battle dragon. Hence, his aura could be considered as dragon might. Under the pressure, the faces of the law enforcement team's disciples turned red, as though they were under great pressure. Before one of the enforcers could finish his sentence, he spat out a mouthful of blood. This pressure caused him to be unable to withstand it all of a sudden. What? Me too. The law enforcers who were kneeling on the ground coughed up mouthfuls of blood. Unable to hold on any longer, they blurted it out. Only then did Chu Fengmian retract his pressure and look over at the law enforcers as they produced their identity medallions and bags of holding. How terrifying! He actually made these law enforcement team disciples vomit blood with just his pressure. Even some of the academy's elders might not be able to do that. Wuxing Academy actually has such a monstrous genius. If it was just strength, the top 20 inner disciples of Wuxing Academy could easily subdue these law enforcement team disciples. However, to force them to vomit blood with just his pressure, even some of the hall masters and elders couldn't do that. Looking at Chu Fengmian, the surrounding disciples were all shocked. Their eyes were filled with fear. No one dared to offend Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's move this time was enough to intimidate most people. Indeed, only strength can prevent one from being bullied. Chu Fengmian thought to himself as he looked at the crowd's eyes. In his previous life, he didn't have strength. He could only watch helplessly as his master and senior brothers and sisters were besieged by the 7 great sections. In the end, Chu Fengmian didn't even have the strength to resist before the 7 great sex experts. He could only commit suicide. In this life, he wouldn't make the same mistake again. He needed strength to achieve everything he wanted. Bring them all over. The law enforcement disciples had already raised their storage pouches and identity badges. Chu Fengmian made a grabbing motion, and all of them fell into his hand. Chu Fengmian took out his identity card and injected a stream of spiritual energy into it. The contribution points in the identity cards of the law enforcement team disciples were all transferred to Chu Fengmian's identity card. Wuxing Academy's identity cards could be exchanged for contribution points. This was also to facilitate transactions between students and disciples. After transferring all the contribution points, Chu Fengmian's identity card had 55,000 contribution points. These law enforcement team disciples were all extremely wealthy. They had obtained their contribution points by extorting other disciples. Now that Chu Fengmian had taken them away, it could only be considered as karma. As for the storage bags, Chu Fengmian took away all the energy amassing pills in them. As for the other items, Chu Fengmian didn't care for them and threw them back. Take your people and scram. Don't ever appear in front of me again. Chu Fengmian glanced at the law enforcement team disciples and snorted coldly. Only then did he release the pressure on them. The law enforcement team disciples got up and didn't dare to look at Chu Fengmian anymore. They just lifted the law enforcement team disciples under the wall and left with fear in their eyes. If you want revenge, feel free to come. My name is Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian laughed loudly. Chu Fengmian, it's really him. He's the only one with such strength among this year's newcomers. This kid is really arrogant to the extreme. Not only did he offend the crown prince, the Chung family and Family Chu, he even offended the law enforcement team. Everyone wasn't surprised when they heard Chu Fengmian's name. Among this batch of newcomers, Chu Fengmian was the only one who could do this. Many people had already guessed Chu Fengmian's identity when he called him Chu Fengmian. The law enforcement team has kicked an iron plate this time. However, the law enforcement team isn't that easy to bully. I'm afraid those inner disciples and academy elders that they usually support will also make a move. Chapter 130. I want to exchange all my contribution points for energy-gathering pills. Chu Fengmian entered the contribution hall. Without further ado, he took out his identity token and said, "Exchange all of them for energy-gathering pills?" The disciples in the contribution hall were stunned when they heard Chu Fengmian's request, especially when they saw the number on Chu Fengmian's identity token. They were all shocked. There were 55,000 contribution points on Chu Fengmian's identity token. It was their first time encountering someone who wanted to exchange such a huge amount of contribution points for energy-gathering pills. Normally, the disciples of the Martial Victory Academy would rarely exchange their contribution points for energy-gathering pills. They would usually exchange them for some recovery pills or spiritual weapons to increase the success rate and safety of their missions. It would be like Chu Fengmian, who wanted nothing but energy-gathering pills. "Senior, don't you want to exchange for something else? Our contribution hall also has many spiritual tools, healing pills, and so on." The disciple couldn't help but ask. "No need. I just want to exchange them all for energy-gathering pills." Chu Fengmian said calmly. Spiritual weapons and recovery pills were extremely important to martial artists. However, Chu Fengmian didn't need them. Chu Fengmian already had enough spiritual weapons with the Black Azure Sword. He couldn't afford any spiritual weapons of a higher grade with his current wealth. Moreover, Chu Fengmian still had the rich lush monument. Chu Fengmian couldn't control this spiritual weapon yet. If Chu Fengmian needed more powerful spiritual weapons, he might as well study the rich lush monument. As for recovery pills, Chu Fengmian didn't need them at all. Now that Chu Fengmian had the bloodline of the ancient battle dragon, his recovery speed was almost on par with the ancient battle dragon. As long as he didn't die, he could recover completely in a day no matter how serious his injuries were. Therefore, what Chu Fengmian needed the most was energy-gathering pills. Only with more energy-gathering pills could he replenish the spiritual energy required by the ancient battle dragon's shadow in his body. The more ancient battle dragon's blood essence he condensed, the more powerful Chu Fengmian would be. Strength was the foundation of everything. Yes, seeing Chu Fengmian's determination, the disciple couldn't help but shake his head. This time, he had encountered a strange person. It picked up Chu Fengmian's identity card and swiped it at a formation beside it. The number on Chu Fengmian's identity card turned to 0. At the same time, countless jade bottles appeared above the magic array. Teleportation formation. Looks like it's connected to the treasure vault of the Martial Victory Academy. Chu Fengmian thought as he watched this scene. If he could enter the Martial Victory Academy's treasury and devour all the pills, Chu Fengmian's strength would definitely skyrocket. However, this was just a thought for Chu Fengmian. There were many experts in the Martial Victory Academy. At the very least, there was a Saint Xianbei. Chu Fengmian did not believe that there were no other saints in the Martial Victory Academy. Chu Fengmian still had the power to contend with a warrior at the peak of the Imperial Wind Realm. Just like Zhi Lingtian, Chu Fengmian could also injure him. However, there was nothing Chu Fengmian could do when a saint came. The power of saint was not something Chu Fengmian could contend against. Therefore, Chu Fengmian could only think about it. "Senior, these are your pills. There are a total of 55,000 chi-amassing pills." It was the first time the disciple of the worship hall had seen so many chi-amassing pills. He was a little surprised. "All right." Chu Fengmian did not say anything unnecessary. With a wave of his hand, the countless jade bottles were kept into his storage bag. "By the way, does the contribution hall accept monster cores?" Chu Fengmian turned around and suddenly thought of something. He turned back and asked, "Monster cores?" "Of course." "Senior, are you selling monster cores?" The disciple of the contribution hall said with a smile. The contribution hall had always accepted everything. As long as it was something valuable, it could be exchanged for contribution points. All right, Chu Fengmian nodded and threw a storage bag to the disciple of the disciplinary hall. Calculate the contribution points for the monster cores in it. Yes. The disciple of the contribution hall took the storage bag. After a few minutes, he determined the value of the monster cores and answered. It's worth 30,000 contribution points. 30,000 contribution points. This price is about 20% lower than the price outside. Chu Fengmian thought when he heard the price. This batch of monster cores was actually obtained by Chu Fengmian from the demonic beasts he killed on the deserted island and from the disciples of the Green Alliance. During the second assessment, Chu Fengmian only handed over half of the monster cores. The other half was brought out by Chu Fengmian. He was ready to buy it at a good price. The price of exchanging contribution points in the contribution hall was indeed 20% lower than the price outside. However, it was still much higher than the price of the demonic beast assessment. Exchange them all for contribution points, Chu Fengmian said. Chu Fengmian was too lazy to sell them outside. He might as well sell them all to the contribution hall. Now that Chu Fengmian was leaving the academy to carry out a mission, he had to be prepared to buy more elixirs. As for the remaining contribution points, exchange them all for, Senior brother, do you still need chi amassing pills? Before Chu Fengmian finished his words, a skinny disciple beside him suddenly asked. This skinny disciple had a shrewd face. He did not look like a martial artist, but more like a businessman. Senior brother, can we have a chat outside the hall? The skinny disciple glanced at the disciples of the worship hall and whispered. Sure. Chu Fengmian glanced at the skinny disciple and guessed what he wanted. He nodded. Chu Fengmian took the identity token and followed him out of the worship hall. They came to a remote corner. My name is Tang Billion, an outer disciple of the Wuxing Academy. Senior brother, you must be this year's newcomer king, Chu Fengmian. Tang Billion took the initiative to speak to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian was not surprised to be called out. He had caused such a big commotion outside the contribution hall. Tang Billion must have seen it from the side. Naturally, he knew Chu Fengmian's identity. Senior brother, if you need chi amassing pills, why don't you exchange them with me? Tang Billion looked at Chu Fengmian and said with a smile. The price is definitely much higher than the contribution hall. After all, it's not worth exchanging chi amassing pills here. What's the price? Chu Fengmian saw through Tang Billion's identity when he spoke just now. Although the Wuxing Academy claimed that disciples were not allowed to do business here, no one actually cared about it. Chapter 131. One contribution point could only be exchanged for one chi-gathering pill in the contribution hall, but could be exchanged for several chi-gathering pills in the outside world. After all, there were many people who didn't belong to Wuxing Academy who needed to buy things in the contribution hall. Tang 10 billion should be one of them. One contribution point in exchange for two chi-gathering pills. Tang Billions looked at Chu Fengmian and said, What do you think, senior brother? 3. One contribution point in exchange for 3 chi-gathering pills. Chu Fengmian glanced at Tang Billions and said calmly, This price should be profitable for you, right? Chu Fengmian knew that one contribution point in Wuxing Academy could be exchanged for 4 or 5 chi-gathering pills in the outside world, but it required special connections. Chu Fengmian couldn't be bothered to deal with such transactions, but since Tang Billions had come out, Chu Fengmian certainly had to offer a good price. 3. Senior brother, this price is a bit high. Tang 10 Billion's thin face showed a bit of embarrassment. We're taking risks. This price is really unacceptable. How about this? If senior brother is willing to exchange all 30,000 contribution points, I can give you an additional 10,000 chi-gathering pills for a total of 70,000 chi-gathering pills. What do you think? Tang Billions rolled his eyes and said. His expression was indescribably distressed, as if he had been struggling for a long time. 3. This price won't change, Chu Fengmian said calmly. Although Tang Billions looked distressed, Chu Fengmian knew that he had 2 lives. However, Chu Fengmian had lived 2 lives, so he naturally knew that since Tang 10 Billion dared to offer 2, he would at least get double the profit. 3 qi gathering pills was Chu Fengyan's bottom line. If you agree to this price, I'll come to you when I need more qi gathering pills in the future. Seeing Tang Billion's hesitation, Chu Fengyan suddenly said. When he heard this, Tang 10 Billion, who had been distressed, suddenly relaxed. Are you serious? Of course, Chu Fengyan said calmly. If he kept exchanging for qi gathering pills in the consecration hall, it would be too much of a loss. Therefore, if he found someone like Tang 10 Billion to do the exchange, he would be able to get more qi gathering pills. For Chu Fengyan, he only needed an endless supply of qi gathering pills. He didn't care about other things. It didn't matter who the contribution points were given to, whether it was to the consecration hall or Tang 10 Billion. All right, as long as Senior Apprentice Brother comes to exchange in the future, I'll sell it to Senior Apprentice Brother for 3 pills. Tang Billion said firmly. If it was a deal, the price of 3 qi gathering pills was indeed not worth it. But if he could use this opportunity to win over Chu Fengyan, it was extremely worth it for Tang Billions. An inner sect disciple like Chu Fengyan, especially this year's newcomer king, would need many medicinal pills. As long as he was in this business for a long time, he wouldn't have to worry about making a profit. Here are 90,000 qi amassing pills. Senior Brother, please take a look. Tang Billions took out a storage pouch and handed it to Chu Fengyan. Neatly arranged qi amassing pills could be seen in the middle. All right, Chu Fengyan glanced at it before keeping the storage bag. At the same time, he transferred the 30,000 contribution points from his identity card. Senior Brother, aren't you worried? Tang Billions asked in surprise when he saw Chu Fengyan accept the qi-gathering pills so decisively. When he was doing business with some disciples, they were extremely careful, afraid that he would cheat them. It was rare to see someone like Chu Fengyan who didn't even look at the pills. What's there to worry about? If you dare to cheat, you don't need to stay in the academy anymore. Chu Fengyan sneered. No one dared to cheat Chu Fengyan. Senior Apprentice Brother, you're really straightforward. Tang Billions pretended not to hear Chu Fengyan's threatening words. He took out a jade talisman and handed it to Chu Fengyan. This is a voice transmission jade talisman. Senior Apprentice Brother, if you need anything, you can come to me. By the way, I forgot to mention that I'm also a member of Treasure Gathering Firm. Senior Apprentice Brother, if you need anything to sell, you can also come to me. Treasure Gathering Firm. Chu Fengyan muttered in his heart. Treasure Gathering Firm was the largest firm in Wusheng Nation. He didn't expect it to extend its business to Wusheng Academy. But it was also good. If Chu Fengyan needed anything, he could come to Tang Billions directly. Chu Fengyan took the voice transmission jade talisman and turned to leave. This time, he had exchanged a total of 145,000 energy gathering pills, which was enough for Chu Fengyan's cultivation for the time being. Chu Fengyan now needed close to 5,000 energy gathering pills for his daily cultivation. These 145,000 energy gathering pills were actually enough for Chu Fengyan to cultivate normally for a month. Fortunately, it was enough for Chu Fengyan to consume until the completion of the mission. It's not easy to raise a big eater. Chu Fengyan couldn't help but sigh in his heart. If it wasn't him who could obtain so many energy gathering pills, it would be impossible for others to satisfy the appetite of the ancient battle dragon. However, when there were enough energy gathering pills, the true strength of the battle dragon skill would be revealed. As long as there were enough energy gathering pills, there would be no bottlenecks for a breakthrough. When Chu Fengyan awakened a few more drops of ancient battle dragon blood essence, he would have enough capital to fight against Ling Tian. I should go and complete the mission given by Master first. I wonder how it will turn out. Chu Fengyan made up his mind. Without thinking about anything else, he left Wusheng Academy. In Wusheng Academy, there were arcs heading towards the extreme capital every day. He waited at the pier for a while before taking the arcs and returning to the extreme capital. When he returned to the tea house, he rode on the black-scaled horse king and galloped towards the northwest desert. The black-scaled horse king galloped for 3 days before Chu Fengyan arrived at a military camp at the edge of the northwest desert. This military camp was the Flat Sand King's military camp mentioned in the mission. Chu Fengmian came here to help the Flat Sand King eliminate the sand bandits. There were more than 10,000 sand bandits in the Northwest Desert. Chu Fengmian couldn't kill them all by himself. Hence, the main task of this mission was to eliminate the sand bandits from the Flat Sand King's army. Chu Fengmian was only responsible for dealing with a few experts among the sand bandits. It was impossible for Chu Fengmian to kill every single sand bandit. Who is it? Stop. Trespassing into the military camp is a crime punishable by death. When Chu Fengmian arrived at the entrance of the military camp, a few armored soldiers walked out. Chapter 132. I'm a disciple of the Martial Victory Academy. I'm here to help the Pingsha King eliminate the sand bandits. Chu Fengmian said calmly. A disciple of the Martial Victory Academy? The soldiers were shocked as they sized up Chu Fengmian. One of them said cautiously, "Do you have proof?" Chu Fengmian didn't waste time and threw his identity badge over. The soldiers took the identity medallion and infused it with spiritual power. Then, the two words intersect were reflected. So, it's an inner disciple of the Martial Victory Academy. Please come in. The soldiers hurriedly said respectfully and opened up a path for him. You're not allowed to ride a horse in the military camp. We'll take care of the black-scaled horse kings. One of the soldiers said. All right. Chu Fengmian dismounted from his horse and walked to the barracks with a few soldiers. There were about 10,000 people in the military camp. Most of them were at the 7th level of the bone-tempering realm and above. Some of them were even close to the body-tempering realm. Chu Fengmian knew that the soldiers of the Martial Victory Academy were mostly cultivators with low aptitudes. They were limited by their aptitudes and couldn't improve their strength. Even if they joined the army, they could still receive military pay. Of course, the Pingsha King didn't lack experts by his side. He could use his resources to attract experts to his side. My lord, the disciples of the Martial Victory Academy have arrived. A soldier spoke to the largest tent. Not long after, several figures walked out of the tent. The one walking at the front was a man of noble status. He was the Pingsha King, the current king of the Martial Victory Academy. He was sent to the Northwest Desert to suppress the surrounding areas. That was why he was called the Pingsha King. However, judging from his current expression, it wasn't an easy task. The number of sand bandits in the Northwest Desert didn't decrease. Instead, they recruited more people. Now, the Pingsha King was in a terrible fix. He could only seek help from the Martial Victory Academy. Young master, you must be a disciple of the Martial Victory Academy. The Pingsha King looked at Chu Fengmian and said with a smile, in that case, the day of the sand bandits' destruction is just around the corner. Young master, please come in for a chat. The Pingsha King said and entered the tent with Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian sat down in a nearby seat. In this tent, besides the Pingsha King, there were 6 or 7 middle-aged men. These middle-aged men were not weak. They were at least at the peak of the body refining realm. The strongest among them was at the 2nd level of the Divine Sea realm. In the victorious Wushuang country, he could be considered a slightly famous powerhouse. Seeing Chu Fengmian walk in, the middle-aged men sized up Chu Fengmian a few times. Especially when they saw Chu Fengmian's realm, they couldn't help but frown. May I know what young master's realm is? A middle-aged man beside him suddenly asked when he saw Chu Fengmian sit down. 7th level of the body, refinement stage. Chu Fengmian didn't try to hide anything. With the strength of these middle-aged men, it shouldn't be difficult for them to see through Chu Fengmian's realm. Naturally, he didn't need to hide it. 7th level of the body, refinement stage. We reported this matter to Wu Sheng Academy, and they actually sent a little fellow like this? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, one of the middle-aged men said angrily, 7th level of the body, refinement realm. What's the point of having such a brat here? Another middle-aged man couldn't help but ask, oh, what does eradicating the sand bandits have to do with one's realm? Seeing the anger of the middle-aged men, Chu Fengmian sneered. Just eradicating the sand bandits is enough. That's easy for you to say. With your 7th level of the body refinement stage cultivation, aren't you courting death by eradicating the sand bandits? The middle-aged man snorted coldly and said, I think you should go back as soon as possible. Let others handle this matter. Young master, these are the experts under my command. Although their words are a little harsh, there's nothing wrong with it. The Pink Sha King chimed in from the side. Young master, there is something you don't know. Although these sand bandits are a motley crew, some of their leaders are disciples of the 4 major sections. The most powerful leader has even reached the 3rd level of the Spirit Sea realm. The experts under my command are no match for the leader of the sand bandits. With young master's realm, it's better for you to return to the academy and pass this task to someone else. The Flat Sand King spoke. Chu Fengmian understood what he meant. Chu Fengmian's realm was lower than the middle-aged men present. These middle-aged men were no match for the leader of the sand bandits. Chu Fengmian would only be courting death if he went. It seemed that the Flat Sand King had also seen through Chu Fengmian's realm and despised him for being too low. Since that was the case, it seemed that he had to show some strength to convince the Flat Sand King. Since you don't believe in my strength, then who among you can come and fight with me? Chu Fengmian said with a confident smile. If anyone can withstand my sword, then I'll leave immediately. How about it? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the middle-aged men present were furious. Their realms were higher than Chu Fengmian's. Now, Chu Fengmian said that none of them could withstand his sword. This was arrogance to the extreme. What? Does this kid really think that there's no one in our army? How arrogant! Your Highness, let me do it. A brawny man sitting opposite Chu Fengmian stood up and said, These disciples of Wusheng Academy are all arrogant. If we don't teach him a lesson today, he won't give up. The Flat Sand King glanced at the brawny man and then at Chu Fengmian. He frowned. Yin Sun, don't hurt him. Yes. Yin Sun walked in front of Chu Fengmian and said coldly, Come, let's see how you could defeat me with one sword. Good. In that case, I'll draw my sword. Chu Fengmian said calmly. The profound azure sword appeared in his hand. His feet moved and his body flickered slightly. He returned to his original position. All of this happened in an instant. It was as if Chu Fengmian was standing in his original position and hadn't moved at all. Kid, why aren't you making your move? Seeing Chu Fengmian not moving, the other middle-aged men laughed loudly. Don't tell me you don't have confidence and don't dare to make your move. However, before they could finish their words, they all shut their mouths. Chapter 133. When did that happen? What a terrifying speed. It's hard to even see clearly. Those middle-aged men widened their eyes. They only saw Chu Fengmian's body move slightly. They couldn't even see clearly that Chu Fengmian had left a wound on Yin Sun's chest. The wound wasn't big, but if Chu Fengmian had used a little more strength, Yin Sun would have died under his sword. Yin Sun, who had reached the peak of the body-refining realm, couldn't even withstand Chu Fengmian's sword. At the very least, only the strongest warrior at the 2nd LV of the Spirit Sea realm among all the middle-aged men present could withstand this sword strike. Is there anyone else who doesn't believe in my strength? Chu Fengmian said with a smile. The middle-aged men all took a few steps back after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. They didn't even see Chu Fengmian's sword clearly. How could they withstand it? Only the warrior at the 2nd level of the Divine Sea realm was still standing there. Young master's swordsmanship is indeed superb. Let me, Hu Hanfei, experience your swordsmanship. Hu Hanfei took a step forward, looked at Chu Fengmian, and said coldly, Although I'm a Divine Sea realm warrior, and it's inappropriate for me to deal with a junior, the strength of the Sand Bandit chieftain is far above mine. If young master can't defeat me, you'll just die in vain if you go to eliminate the Sand Bandit chieftain. What Ohanfei said was right. The Flat Sand King beside him nodded in agreement. None of the middle-aged men present was a match for the Sand Bandit chieftain. If Chu Fengmian couldn't defeat them, he couldn't eliminate the Sand Bandit chieftain. It's okay. When warriors fight, their strength depends on themselves. There's no such thing as fairness. Chu Fengmian said with a smile. He was also worried that Hu Hanfei would be afraid of his Divine Sea realm warrior and wouldn't fight with his full strength. His words dispelled Hu Hanfei's thoughts. Indeed, when real warriors fought, how could they be unwilling to fight because the opponent was weak? If Hu Hanfei was afraid, he wouldn't be convinced even if Chu Fengmian defeated him. Hu Hanfei said in a low voice, "Young master is indeed a wise man. All right, I won't hold back. Please be careful. Please." He hefted his profound azure sword and waited for Hu Hanfei to attack. Huh. Hu Hanfei let out a low growl. His figure was like a raging bull as he charged towards Chu Fengmian. This Hu Hanfei was also a body cultivator. His brute strength was frighteningly high. With a single punch, he smashed towards Chu Fengmian's chest. So, the profound azure sword in Chu Fengmian's hand spun, and the body of the sword rushed toward Hu Hanfei's fist wind to block it. Boom! When Hu Hanfei's fist wind smashed into the body of the dark green sword, a huge explosion was heard. The rebounding force shattered the tent. Break! Chu Fengmian indifferently spat out a word. He injected spiritual energy into the sword and abruptly exerted force. Hu Hanfei was forced back several meters before he finally came to a stop. A few drops of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. "Young master is strong. This old man admires you." Hu Hanfei looked at Chu Fengmian and said respectfully with his head lowered. Just now, Chu Fengmian's fist had only collided with the body of the sword. The body of the sword was enough to force Hu Hanfei back several meters. If Chu Fengmian had used the body of the sword, Hu Hanfei would have been killed with a single strike. The strength of the two sides were not on the same level. With Chu Fengmian's strength, he would have been able to kill Hu Hanfei in less than 3 strikes. Hu Hanfei was actually defeated in a single strike. Could this disciple of the Martial Victory Academy really be so monstrous? Those middle-aged men looked at Chu Fengmian. There was no longer any contempt in their eyes. Instead, there was only admiration and envy. Only strength could prove oneself. Those middle-aged men couldn't help but curse themselves for being stupid in their hearts. Could the disciples of the Martial Victory Academy be judged with common sense? That was the gathering place of countless monstrous geniuses. If Chu Fengmian had the strength, how could he dare to take on such a character? 2 strikes, 2 victories. Even Hu Hanfei, whose strength had reached the 2nd level of the Divine Sea Realm, couldn't take a single strike from Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's words weren't boasting. He was a man of his word. Good. The Pingsha King turned pale with fright. Then, his face lit up with joy. As an inner disciple of the Martial Victory Academy, young master's strength is indeed impressive. Young master's strength has already proven that he is extremely powerful. In this case, there's hope to eliminate the Sand Bandits. The Pingsha King was also overjoyed. The stronger Chu Fengmian was, the greater the hope of eliminating the Sand Bandits. The Sand Bandits of the Northwest Barren Desert were a great threat to the Martial Victory Country. If the Pingsha King could eliminate these Sand Bandits, his status would also be greatly improved. Chu Fengmian's arrival finally gave him hope to eliminate the Sand Bandits. "My lord, where did these Sand Bandits come from?" Chu Fengmian asked curiously. In his impression, Sand Bandits were ordinary people with some strength. However, compared to the regular army, they could only avoid the sharp edge. They didn't dare to confront head-on and could only hide. But now, according to the Pingsha King's words, these Sand Bandits didn't seem to be simple. Especially their leader, who was actually a LV3 Divine Sea Realm warrior and a disciple of the 4 major sections. Although the 4 major sects weren't as famous as the Martial Victory Academy in the Martial Victory Country, they weren't far behind. The 4 major sects were forces that were beyond the control of the royal family of the Martial Victory Country. Although their experts weren't as good as the Martial Victory Academy, they were still far behind. Chu Fengmian didn't expect that the disciples of the 4 major sects would come out to be Sand Bandits. "Young master, you may not know, but the Martial Victory Country isn't as peaceful as you think." Hearing Chu Fengmian's question, the Pingsha King smiled bitterly. The leader of the Sand Bandits is called Mu Yuanhua. He used to be an inner disciple of the Candle Flame sect. For a spiritual weapon, he killed his fellow disciples and betrayed his sect. He came to the Northwest Barren Desert and collected several groups of Sand Bandits. Suddenly, he gathered more than 10,000 people. This group of Sand Bandits robbed the surrounding cities every day. Many city lords couldn't do anything about them. They could only offer them wealth in the grand competition for peace. But later, this Mu Yuanhua was said to have cultivated a kind of demonic skill. He devoured human flesh every day. His sand bandits broke into the city and massacred the city. This made the royal family angry and wanted to eliminate these sand bandits. Chapter 134. Demonic Cultivation Technique. Chu Fengyan frowned after hearing the Pingsha king's explanation. Demonic cultivation technique was actually the name given to those evil cultivation techniques in the 9 regions. Most of these cultivation techniques were extremely evil. Those who cultivated this demonic cultivation technique had always been feasting on human blood, slaughtering civilians, and committing all kinds of evil deeds. However, this kind of demonic skill was extremely fast to cultivate, and its power was extremely high. Therefore, some martial artists would take the risk and cultivate this demonic skill. One of the 7 major sects, the 9 Demon City, started off by cultivating demonic cultivation techniques. However, some experts in the 9 Demon City improved their cultivation techniques and removed them from the demonic path, becoming one of the 7 major sections. Those who cultivated demonic cultivation techniques were known as demons. Usually, they would be killed quickly when they appeared. Why hasn't this Mu Yuanhua been killed by others since he cultivated demonic cultivation techniques? Chu Fengyan frowned. The sand bandits of the Northwest Barren Desert had been growing for more than a year. The news of Mu Yuanhua cultivating demonic cultivation techniques should have been spread out long ago. Why would it be reported to the Wusheng Academy? Young master, you may not know, but this Mu Yuanhua is extremely cunning. The Pingsha king replied after hearing Chu Fengyan's question. The cities that Mu Yuanhua chose to massacre were mostly remote and unfrequented cities. Therefore, he wasn't discovered in a short period of time. Moreover, this Mu Yuanhua is cunning. If he discovered that there were experts coming to kill him, he would hide. At most, he would let people kill some of the sand bandits. However, he would be safe and sound. Not long after, the strength of the sand bandits would grow even stronger. The Pingsha king looked at Chu Fengyan with anticipation in his eyes. This time, I would like to request young master to kill this Mu Yuanhua for the sake of the Northwest Barren Desert. It's my duty. This kind of demon must be killed. Chu Fengyan said, Your Highness, do you have a plan now? I've already found out where this Mu Yuanhua is hiding. The army is now ready. Now that young master is here, the army can be dispatched to kill this Mu Yuanhua. The Pingsha king said coldly. In order to kill Mu Yuanhua, he had already made a plan to find out where Mu Yuanhua was hiding. This time, he must kill Mu Yuanhua. All right, there's no time to lose. Let's set off now, Chu Fengyan said. Naturally, it would be better to complete this mission as soon as possible. Moreover, for a devil like Mu Yuanhua, if he was allowed to live for another day, there would be even more people who would die in his hands. Good, let's go. The Flat Sand King walked out of the tent and gave the order. Countless soldiers were reorganized. A troop of nearly 10,000 people marched toward the northwestern desert. Along the way, the army only encountered a few scattered sand bandits, but they were all captured and killed by the middle-aged men. It was already nighttime, and the army set up camp. For a martial artist at Chu Fengyan's level, it was naturally extremely easy for him to not sleep or rest for several days. But for those ordinary soldiers, their realm was far from reaching this point. Coupled with the fact that they were wearing heavy armor, one day was already their limit. If they did not rest at night, they would naturally be dispirited the next day. If they encountered the sand bandits, it would be even more dangerous. Young master, this Mu Yuanhua cultivates demonic arts, and his strength has increased greatly. If you're unable to resist him, young master can leave by yourself. The Flat Sand King looked at Chu Fengyan and said aloud, After all, eliminating the sand bandits is this king's matter. If something happens to young master, this king will not be able to explain it to Wusheng Academy. It's fine. Since this mission is accepted by this Chu, there is no reason for this Chu to escape. Hearing the Flat Sand King's words, Chu Fengyan revealed a confident smile. Moreover, no matter how strong this Mu Yuanhua is, This Chu is confident that I can kill him. Your Highness, just wait for the good news. Thank you for your auspicious words, young master. The Flat Sand King said. He then sat down and rested. Although it was a rest, no one dared to sleep. In this desert, the sand bandits were like wild wolves that could launch a sneak attack at any time. Chu Fengyan also leaned against a rock and closed his eyes to rest. He released his divine sense to observe every movement in the desert. Rustle. Under Chu Fengyan's full observation, countless footsteps suddenly sounded in the distance. These footsteps were orderly. Chu Fengyan felt as if there was a bloody aura erupting in the distance. Someone is coming. Chu Fengyan roared. Countless soldiers stood up one by one, looked into the distance, and tidied up their weapons. The sand bandits have appeared. In the distance, a group of sand bandits was like a swarm of locusts rushing towards them. Each of these sand bandits had a strong smell of blood on their bodies. It was unknown how many living beings they had killed. Tens of thousands of sand bandits had appeared. This bloody aura made even the Flat Sand King show some fear on his face. Ha ha ha, Flat Sand King, I didn't expect you to be so stupid. Instead of hiding outside, you actually dared to lead an army into the desert. Are you prepared to die for this venerable? In the sky, a cloud of blood mist suddenly appeared. This voice came from the blood mist. Mu Yuanhua. Seeing the blood mist, the Flat Sand King's face condensed. He didn't expect the real Mu Yuanhua to take the initiative to appear. This is Mu Yuanhua. Chu Fengyan looked at the blood mist and scanned it with his spiritual sense. Naturally, he saw a man who looked less than 30 years old in the blood mist. This man's body wasn't actually skin, but black scales. He looked like a demon. If an ordinary person were to see such an appearance, they would probably feel some fear in their hearts. The Flat Sand King looked at Mu Yuanhua and roared. Mu Yuanhua, this king has come today to destroy you, the devil. You can't escape today. Escape? Why should this venerable escape? This venerable's devil art has reached the large success stage. Do you think I'm afraid of a bunch of trash like you? Mu Yuanhua laughed arrogantly. Didn't you say that you've already asked the disciples of the Martial Victory Academy and the 4 major sects to kill this venerable? Today, this venerable's devil art has reached the large success stage. Even if the disciples of the Martial Victory Academy and the 4 major sects want to kill this venerable, it's absolutely impossible. A monster who has fallen into the devil's path dares to say that he has reached the large success stage of his devil art? How stupid. Suddenly, Chu Fengyan spoke. This voice was filled with disdain. This Mu Yuanhua's appearance was nothing more than the appearance of someone who had cultivated a devil art and had been eroded by it. Chu Fengyan had seen many such devils in his previous life. They were just trash who had failed to cultivate a devil art. Chapter 135. Damn it, who is it? Come out with me. Hearing Chu Fengyan's sarcasm, Mu Yuanhua was furious. In the blood mist, a rain of blood suddenly fell from the sky. Every drop of this blood rain was extremely corrosive. Ordinary warriors would lose their lives if they were touched by it. Die. With the blood of these 10,000 people, my demonic art will be complete. Mu Yuanhua laughed heartily. He cultivated the devil arts. The more people he killed, the more blood he could absorb and refine it into devil blood to increase his strength. You dare to be so arrogant with such a puny demonic art. Chu Fengyan laughed. With a stomp of his foot, his figure suddenly rushed into the sky. The sword in his hand flashed and turned into a sword barrier. The rain of blood was easily blocked by the sword in Chu Fengyan's hand. Your Highness, let me deal with this demon. You can deal with the other sand bandits. Chu Fengyan turned his head and said to Xianxi King. Then, he rushed towards Mu Yuanhua and slashed out with his sword. I was wondering who it was. So it's the little guy from Wushang Academy? Looking at Chu Fengyan, Mu Yuanhua sneered. A little brat at the body refinement realm wants to kill me? Dream on. Blood rain demon. Mu Yuanhua laughed. Countless blood mist condensed around his body and turned into a blood-red demon. He rushed towards Chu Fengyan and clawed at him. A genius from Wushang Academy can also add a lot of strength to me. Didn't Wu Sheng Academy want to kill me? I'll kill a genius today and let Wu Sheng Academy know how powerful I am. Mu Yuanhua laughed. In his opinion, Chu Fengyan was already a dead man. Even a Spirit Sea Realm warrior might not be able to withstand his claw. Only the top 10 inner disciples of the Wu Sheng Academy would be able to withstand such a demonic skill. Looking at Chu Fengyan's appearance, he was extremely unfamiliar. He was most likely a newcomer. How could a newcomer resist his demonic art? You've only learned a little demonic art. You can't even control it, and you want to kill me? Chu Fengyan sneered. Break! As soon as Chu Fengyan's voice faded, the tip of his sword struck out. The bloody hand formed by Mu Yuanhua was shattered by the tip of Chu Fengyan's sword. Chu Fengyan easily dispelled it. Impossible! How can a little fellow at the body refinement realm possibly withstand this Empyrean's demonic skill? Seeing that his bloody hand was broken, Mu Yuanhua shouted in disbelief and crazily urged the devil power in his body. Blood demon descends. Bring disaster to the world. The blood-red figure wrapped around Mu Yuanhua's body became even larger as it crazily emitted a terrifying blood qi. It was unknown how many people he had killed in order to condense this blood qi. Chu Fengmian glanced over. This Mu Yuanhua must have killed at least 10,000 people to be able to condense such a thick blood qi. For the sake of cultivating the demonic arts, you slaughtered wantonly. You have already turned into a demon and become a true demon. Chu Fengmian looked at Mu Yuanhua and said coldly. This Mu Yuanhua had only cultivated the demonic arts for half a year, but he had already killed so many people in half a year. If this Mu Yuanhua was allowed to continue developing, it was very likely that he would become a great demon of the 9 regions. Becoming a demon? As long as I have power. So what if I become a demon? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the corner of Mu Yuanhua's mouth revealed a hint of ridicule. This Empyrean has already become a demon. The moment this Empyrean's demonic arts reach large success, I will destroy Wu Sheng Academy. I will destroy the 4 great sects. All living things are nourished by this Empyrean's flesh and blood. Then today, I will first break your demonic arts so that you can no longer do evil. Chu Fengmian coldly snorted. Sword! The tip of the profound azure sword flashed, and a sword aura suddenly slashed towards Mu Yuanhua. Under this sword aura, the layer of bloody mist on Mu Yuanhua's body suddenly shattered, and his half-human, half-demon appearance was instantly exposed. What is this? A monster! This Mu Yuanhua. He is indeed a demon. Countless soldiers, and even some of the bandits, could not help but raise their heads. Seeing this scene, they all cried out loudly. The current Mu Yuanhua did not even have the slightest bit of human appearance. He was simply a true monster. Damn it, how could a little guy break this Empyrean's demonic arts? Seeing that his demonic arts had been broken, Mu Yuanhua also shouted out in disbelief. What he could not accept was that Chu Fengmian was only a body refinement realm martial artist. How could a body refinement realm martial artist defeat him? You hid your cultivation? Mu Yuanhua looked at Chu Fengmian and angrily said, Damn it, this Empyrean actually fell into your scheme today. But if you want to kill this Empyrean, it won't be that easy. As Mu Yuanhua spoke, a layer of bloody mist spread out from his body. Boom! With a sound, Mu Yuanhua's figure suddenly shattered, leaving behind a bloody light that fled towards the depths of the northwest desert. This Empyrean will remember today's enmity. When this Empyrean recovers his strength, this Empyrean will wash all the cities in the northwest desert with blood to avenge today's enmity. Mu Yuanhua's voice became more and more arrogant as he went further and further away. Not good. We can't let him go. The Pingsha King shouted. No matter how many of these bandits were killed, it would be useless. Only by killing Mu Yuanhua could the northwest desert's bandits be solved. Don't worry, Your Highness. This demon won't be able to escape. Chu Fengmian sneered. His figure also turned into a shadow and flew towards the direction where Mu Yuanhua had fled. Blood escape. I didn't expect this Mu Yuanhua to have such a profound escape technique. But with his strength, he shouldn't be able to last long. Under Chu Fengmian's feet, The phantom movement technique was fully activated. His speed was comparable to a martial artist at the peak of the Divine Sea realm. His figure flashed across the desert, and in an instant, he was 100 meters away, following the bloody light. This blood escape was one of the most profound escape techniques in the 9 regions. Its speed was extremely fast, but the price to pay was also great. Using blood escape would consume nearly half of one's blood essence. Without spending a few years, it would be impossible to recover, so it could only be used to save one's life. Chu Fengmian didn't expect Mu Yuanhua to know blood escape in this remote Wuxing country, so he let him escape temporarily. But he couldn't escape. Chu Fengmian's divine sense had completely locked onto him. The moment Mu Yuanhua prepared to rest, Chu Fengmian would kill him. Chapter 136. Senior Brother Feng, why is there a smell of blood in this desert? Could it be that the demon has been killed? A few warriors rode their horses into the desert. They were dressed luxuriously and were obviously disciples from powerful forces. Not necessarily. Since the demon's mission is still there, no one should have killed him yet. But it seems that someone has arrived before us. Senior Brother Feng got off his horse and observed the surroundings. Suddenly, he smelled a special smell of blood in the air. Blood escape. That devil was actually forced to use blood flight? Who is it? Could it be that the top 10 inner disciples of Wusheng Academy have made a move? Senior Brother Feng's face changed. Blood escape was Mu Yuanhua's greatest life-saving technique. Now that it was forced out, it meant that Mu Yuanhua was now in a desperate situation. Let's go. Let's chase after that demon. Since he has been forced to use blood escape, he must be very weak now. Senior Brother Feng's eyes revealed some greed. This demon is a traitor of our Candle Flame sect. Even if we want to kill him, it should be done by our disciples. Everyone, get off your horses and fly. Let's chase after that demon. Yes. The 5 or 6 warriors behind Senior Brother Feng shouted in unison. They all got off their horses and flew into the air. These warriors had reached the Divine Sea realm. They turned into streaks of light in the air and chased after the demon. Phew, that kid should have been shaken off. In the desert, Mu Yuanhua sat on the ground and rested in a dilapidated house. Where did such a terrifying kid come from? With just the body refining realm, he can force me to this extent. But so what? My blood escape is the fastest in the world. No one can catch up to me. As Mu Yuanhua spoke, his eyes revealed a look of hatred. Sooner or later, I will kill that kid and destroy Wusheng Academy. Is that so? I'm afraid you won't have the chance. Before Mu Yuanhua could relax, a voice suddenly sounded. In front of him, a figure slowly condensed. It was Chu Fengmian. You. Seeing Chu Fengmian's sudden appearance, Mu Yuanhua's face completely changed. He had used blood escape and consumed half of his essence blood to get rid of Chu Fengmian. But now, Chu Fengmian had caught up so quickly. Who are you? I have never heard of a disciple like you in Wusheng Academy. There was no way out now. Mu Yuanhua, even if he was to die, he wanted to be a ghost that knew the truth. In his opinion, among the inner disciples of Wusheng Academy, only the top 10 disciples could kill him. But looking at Chu Fengmian's appearance, he was so young and unfamiliar. Obviously, he wasn't familiar with him. Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's Chu Fengmian. Since this Mu Yuanhua wanted to die, there was no harm in Chu Fengmian wanting him to die knowing the truth. Chu Fengmian. Mu Yuanhua silently repeated this voice and suddenly thought of something. Chu Fengmian, the newcomer marshal Wusheng Academy this year, the person who broke the record of Lingtian. Although Mu Yuanhua lived in the desert, he had a lot of information. He was very familiar with Chu Fengmian's name. Wasn't this the newcomer marshal Wusheng Academy's newcomer king that caused a commotion a few days ago? The news of Chu Fengmian breaking the Lingtian record had already spread throughout Wuxing country. Even he had heard of it. That's right. Chu Fengmian looked at Mu Yuanhua and said coldly, Since you already know, then you could be a ghost that knows the truth. Wait, Chu Fengmian, as long as you're willing to let me go, I can give you one of the 3 divine weapons of Candle Flame sect, the Scarlet Flame Sword. Mu Yuanhua hurriedly shouted. If you kill me, you'll only get 2,000 contribution points at most. But if you let me go, I can give you the Scarlet Flame Sword. Scarlet Flame Sword? Chu Fengmian knew from the Pingsha King that Mu Yuan Hua betrayed Candle Flame Sect for a spiritual weapon. He didn't expect it to be one of the 3 divine weapons of Candle Flame Sect, the Scarlet Flame Sword. The 3 divine weapons of Candle Flame Sect were all mid-grade, earth-grade spiritual weapons. They were much better than Chu Fengmian's profound Azure Sword. If he could obtain the Scarlet Flame Sword, it would be more useful than 2,000 contribution points for Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian said coldly, "Where's the Scarlet Flame Sword? If you agree to let me go, then I'll tell you." Before Mu Yuanhua finished speaking, Chu Fengmian's sword was already at his neck. "You don't have the right to bargain. Speak, where's the Scarlet Flame Sword?" Chu Fengmian coldly asked. Bang! Just as Chu Fengmian finished speaking, a huge wave of spiritual energy rushed over. The entire door was broken by this wave of spiritual energy. Then, several cultivators entered the room. Seeing Mu Yuanhua on the ground, their eyes were filled with excitement. "This demon is really here. Junior Brother Chong, Junior Brother One, the 2 of you go capture that demon and take him away." Senior Brother Feng, who was the leader, said with a cold and arrogant face. Chu Fengmian, who didn't even take a look, directly shouted out and ordered them to take Mu Yuanhua away. When Chu Fengmian heard this, he couldn't help but frown. Mu Yuanhua was his prey. This group of people wanted to take Mu Yuanhua away indiscriminately. They didn't put him in their eyes. Boom! Just as Junior Brother Chong and Junior Brother One stepped forward and wanted to take Mu Yuanhua away, Chu Fengmian's sword suddenly fell. A wave of spiritual energy burst out and forced the 2 of them back. "This Mu Yuanhua is this Chu's prey. You're late," Chu Fengmian coldly said. Chu Fengmian didn't have any good impression of this group of people. His words were also extremely cold. "You dare to attack." After Junior Brother Chong and Junior Brother One were forced back, they looked at Chu Fengmian with hostility. The spiritual energy in their bodies suddenly exploded, as if they were about to burst out at any time. Senior Brother Feng, who was the leader, took the initiative to speak. "This brother should be a disciple of the Martial Victory Academy, right? We're the inner disciples of the Candle Flame Sect. This demon is a traitor of our Candle Flame Sect. How about giving me face? We'll take this demon away." Senior Brother Feng spoke while giving a signal with his eyes. The remaining few people also walked towards Mu Yuanhua, wanting to capture him and take him away. "I'll see who dares." Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold, and a wave of spiritual energy suddenly burst out. Chapter 137. Senior Brother Feng frowned when he saw Chu Fengmian attacking again. "Brother, what do you mean? Do you not want to give face to our Candle Flame Sect?" "Senior Brother Feng, why are you talking so much nonsense with this kid? Let's just take this devil away and see if this kid dares to stop us." Junior Brother Chong coldly snorted and glanced at Chu Fengmian before walking towards Mu Yuanhua. He extended his hand and was about to grab Mu Yuanhua. A sword tip suddenly appeared. With a scream, Junior Brother Chong hastily retreated. His hand that was about to grab Mu Yuanhua was cut off by the sword. "If you dare to move, you'll die." Chu Fengmian glanced at Junior Brother Chong and coldly said. He meant what he said. Mu Yuanhua was his prey, and this group of people wanted to take Mu Yuanhua away. Dream on. Aren't you being too heavy-handed? Junior Brother Chong was just joking with you, and you cut off his hand? Senior Brother Feng looked at Chu Fengmian and coldly said, "I see that you really don't want to give face to our Candle Flame Sect." "Face? When have I ever cared about the Candle Flame Sect?" Chu Fengmian disdainfully said. This disdain came from Chu Fengmian's heart. The 7 major sects didn't have any face in front of him. What was a small candle flame sect to him? Today, whoever dared to touch Mu Yuanhua would die. Mu Yuanhua is this Chu's prey. Whoever dares to touch him will die, Chu Fengmian coldly said. Facing the 5 to 6 disciples of the Candle Flame sect, Chu Fengmian didn't have the slightest fear. Senior Brother Feng, this kid is too arrogant. He doesn't give face to our Candle Flame sect. If he takes this devil away today, where will our Candle Flame sect put our face? Junior Brother One said. Although his words were for the Candle Flame sect's face, his eyes were filled with greed when he looked at Mu Yuanhua. Mu Yuanhua was worth 10,000 contribution points in the Candle Flame sect. Senior Brother Feng's expression changed a few times before he coldly said, "You're just a nobody and you dare to be so arrogant? Looks like this batch of Martial Victory Academy's newcomers are really arrogant to the extreme. Looks like as your senior, I'll have to teach you a lesson from Wuxing Academy, lest you go out and shoot your mouth off. Go, beat this brat until he's severely injured. Let's see if he can still be so stubborn." As soon as Senior Martial Brother Feng finished speaking, several disciples suddenly rushed towards Chu Fengyan. The hands of the disciples were engulfed in flames. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a sea of fire and surrounded them. He had said that he would seriously injure Chu Fengmian. However, each of his moves was fatal. A martial artist would have died long ago if he had been burned by the flames. How could he be seriously injured? "Kid, do you know who the person in front of you is?" Feng Huoye, the genius ranked 9th in our Candle Flame sect's intersect. "You dare to go against us? Looks like you really want to die." Junior Brother Wen shouted. His body was covered in flames, and he turned into a flaming man. He rushed towards Chu Fengmian. "My name is Wen Yang. They're the ones who killed you today. When you die, you must remember who killed you." Wen Yang laughed loudly and threw a punch at Chu Fengmian. He had reached the 2nd level of the Divine Sea realm. It wasn't easy for him to deal with a body refining realm martial artist. He could easily kill Chu Fengmian. "There's no need to remember the name of a dead man," Chu Fengmian said calmly. Chu Fengmian's words caused the other Candle Flame sect's warriors to burst into laughter. The name of a dead man? Could it be that Chu Fengmian was naive enough to think that he was a match for so many Candle Flame sect's martial artists? "I thought you were a genius. It turns out that you're just an idiot. Just a piece of trash," Feng Huoye said with a cold smile. "Wen Yang, don't waste time. Hurry up and kill this kid. We're going back to the sect." "Okay," Wen Yang laughed. He didn't waste any time. His fist condensed a scarlet flame and smashed towards Chu Fengmian. This scarlet flame was the Candle Flame sect's unique fire controlling technique. Its temperature was extremely high. Even a Divine Sea realm martial artist might not be able to withstand it. The flame followed the fist wind and rushed towards Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian was instantly engulfed in a sea of fire. For a moment, there was no movement from him. "Ha! I thought you were some kind of expert. So, you're just this kind of trash?" Looking at Chu Fengmian in the sea of fire, Wen Yang laughed. However, his laughter came to an abrupt halt in the next second. The flame of the Candle Flame sect is nothing more than this. The sword flashed. The flame in front of Chu Fengmian was easily cut open and shattered. Wen Yang, who was still laughing a second ago, had a bloody wound on his throat. Blood gushed out, a sword to the throat. Wen Yang, who was still arrogant a second ago, had died under Chu Fengmian's sword. Junior Brother Wen, seeing Wen Yang fall to the ground, Feng Huoye's expression changed greatly. Originally, they thought that dealing with a body-refining realm martial artist would be a piece of cake. Since when did a body-refining realm martial artist have the strength to kill a Divine Sea realm martial artist? Furthermore, a sword to the throat? Especially on Chu Fengmian's body. There was not a single wound. Chu Fengmian was actually unharmed in the sea of fire. Who's the next one to throw away his life? Chu Fengmian's hand shook. The blood on the edge of the dark green sword was shaken to the ground. It was as if he was cleaning up the filth of the blood. "Little bastard, you dared to kill Junior Brother One." The several Candle Flame sect's disciples were all enraged. Countless flames attacked Chu Fengmian at the same time. The flames turned the room Chu Fengmian was in into a sea of fire. "You're all here to throw away your life? It doesn't matter." Chu Fengmian revealed a mocking smile. In Chu Fengmian's eyes, the attacks of these people were as clumsy as clowns. The sword in his hand flashed. Countless rays of sword light flashed. The Candle Flame sect's disciples, who were still attacking earlier, fell to the ground one by one. There was also a bloody scar on their throats. All of them had been slashed by a sword. A group of Divine Sea realm martial artists besieging a body refining realm martial artist. Unexpectedly, they were all killed by a sword to the throat. If this were to spread out, no one would believe it. This was something that even the former Ji Ling Tian couldn't do. Who exactly are you? Feng Huiye's eyes were fixed on Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan's attack was definitely not a nameless person, especially Chu Fengyan's appearance, which was extremely unfamiliar. Feng Huiye had never heard of such a person appearing in the Wuxing Academy. Chapter 138. Chu Fengyan, it's you. Hearing Chu Fengyan's words, Feng Huiye was stunned at first, then greed appeared in his eyes. I didn't expect that you would dare to come out after offending the Crown Prince. Your life is much more valuable than that traitor's. In order to kill you, the Crown Prince offered 100,000 contribution points in the black market. Today, I've met him. Oh, black market? Is this Chu's life really that valuable? Chu Fengyan's eyes flashed with surprise. Chu Fengyan had heard of the black market before. In the Wushang country, there was another major force besides the Wushang Academy and the 4 major sections. It was the black market. In the black market, there were cultivators, elixirs, and even assassins with bounties. As long as you had money, you could get anything in the black market. 100,000 contribution points? This makes me want to capture myself and sell myself in the black market. Ling Tian is really generous. Chu Fengyan said with a cold smile. What he said was true. 100,000 contribution points meant 300,000 qi amassing pills. Chu Fengyan might not be able to accumulate such wealth even if he saved it for a long time. However, this was only a joke. Nevertheless, the price was indeed not low. 100,000 contribution points. Even some warriors at the high levels of the Divine Sea Realm would be tempted. Although it was not enough to invite a wind-controlling realm cultivator, if some high-level Divine Sea Realm cultivators came to trouble Chu Fengyan, it would not be easy for him to deal with them. It seemed that Chu Fengyan had to be careful. Feng Huiye said with a cold smile. Chu Fengyan, I don't care about the grudge between you and the Crown Prince. However, I will still take your life so that I can get the money from the black market. Is that so? You think you can kill me? Chu Fengyan said with a mocking smile. Those disciples of the Candle Flame sect were full of confidence. Now, they had all died under Chu Fengyan's sword. Chu Fengyan could tell that Feng Huiye was at the 3rd tier of the Divine Sea Realm, which was even weaker than Mu Yuanhua. Chu Fengyan wanted to see where Feng Huiye's confidence came from. Kid, don't be too confident. Although your swordsmanship is strong and is able to surpass levels to battle, your cultivation level is still at the 7th level of the body refinement stage. In front of a truly overwhelming strength, this kind of small trick is meaningless. Feng Huiye sneered. He suddenly took out a red medicinal pellet from his hand. Then he swallowed it. As soon as the red elixir entered his mouth, Feng Huiye's realm began to climb rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he had reached the 7th level of the Spirit Sea Realm. I spent 5,000 contribution points to buy this explosive blood pill from the black market. I originally planned to use it to deal with that traitor, but today, you're much more valuable than that traitor. After swallowing the explosive blood pill, the spiritual energy in Feng Huiye's body became frantic and violent. As he spoke, one could feel a trace of malevolence in his voice. A total of 9 levels. Let's see how you're going to contend against me today. Feng Huiye laughed loudly. His body suddenly moved, and a scarlet flame suddenly condensed on his body. This scarlet flame was much stronger than the flame condensed by the disciples of the Candle Flame sect. The scorching flame immediately forced Chu Fengyan to retreat. The cultivation method of the Candle Flame sect was to control all kinds of flames. The stronger one's strength was, the more powerful the flame would be. Chu Fengyan had the bloodline of the ancient war dragon. Although his body couldn't be compared to a real ancient war dragon, it was still much stronger than ordinary warriors. Chu Fengyan didn't care about the flames condensed by the disciples of the Candle Flame sect because they couldn't hurt him. But now, Feng Huiye's realm had been forcibly raised to the 7th level of the Divine Sea Realm. His flame had also become extremely scorching. Chu Fengyan understood that even if he had the bloodline of the ancient war dragon, his body would still be burned by the flame. Explosive blood pill. Is your trump card a pill that overdraws on your body? Chu Fengmian looked at Feng Huoye. Feng Huoye's expression remained unchanged. This explosive blood pill was powerful enough to increase the strength of a venerable warrior by 4 levels. But this increase wasn't his own strength. Feng Huoye's current strength was at most equivalent to the 6th level of the Divine Sea realm. With your current realm, you can only maintain the pill's efficacy for 5 minutes at most. Chu Fengmian looked at Feng Huoye and sneered. As a Grandmaster Alchemist, Chu Fengmian had concocted many pills that overdrew the body in his previous life. This explosive blood pill could only be considered as a low-grade pill with extremely severe side effects. After taking it, one's realm could be increased by 4 levels in a short period of time. But once the pill's efficacy ran out, one would be weakened for at least a year. This kind of pill couldn't be taken unless it was absolutely necessary. After all, it was equivalent to overdrawing a warrior's aptitude for a year. For a martial artist, every year of their youth was extremely precious. At least for Chu Fengmian himself, he would never do such a foolish thing. So what? 5 minutes is enough to kill you. Feng Huoye laughed heartily when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. As long as I can kill you and that traitor and bring you back for the reward, this price is nothing. You should just give up, boy. Not even Grand Emperor Richlush would be able to save you if he were here. If Grand Emperor Richlush couldn't do it, do you think I can't? Chu Fengmian looked at Feng Huoye with a mocking smile. Who said that Chu Fengmian couldn't do what Grand Emperor Richlush couldn't? Grand Emperor Richlush was nothing more than an expert from a remote country. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian could be said to have dominated the 9 realms. Still so stubborn? Fine, I'll beat you up first. Let's see if you can still be so stubborn. Feng Huoye snorted coldly. Raging flames incinerate the earth. Feng Huoye roared, and a mass of flames suddenly spread out from his body. Suddenly, everything around him turned into a sea of fire. The place where Chu Fengmian stood was already filled with flames. Only a vague figure could be seen, standing amidst the flames. Oof. You've been so stubborn for so long. You can't even resist this level of fire? What a waste of a violent blood pill. Feng Huoye curled his lips. He could no longer sense Chu Fengmian's aura. As far as he was concerned, Chu Fengmian had long since been buried in the sea of fire. The temperature of the flames was enough to instantly kill a divine sea realm warrior. It wouldn't be surprising if Chu Fengmian died in the sea of fire. Chapter 139. You want to hurt me with this level of flame? A mocking voice suddenly came from behind Feng Huoye. A chill flashed across Feng Huoye's body. Chu Fengmian was still alive. Chu Fengmian was still alive under that sea of fire. Who was that figure in the sea of fire? When he looked at the sea of fire again, the figure had already disappeared. A shadow. By the time Feng Huoye reacted, Chu Fengmian's figure had already quietly appeared behind him. Chu Fengmian clenched his fist and punched at Feng Huoye. Using your fist? Competing in strength? You're digging your own grave. Feng Huoye laughed disdainfully at Chu Fengmian's punch. After swallowing the explosive blood pill, his strength had reached the 7th tier of the Divine Sea realm. If Chu Fengmian kept dodging, Feng Huoye might not be able to deal with him. But if he wanted to compete in strength, wasn't Chu Fengmian courting death? Die! Feng Huoye turned around and punched at Chu Fengmian as well. His cultivation level was 9 tiers higher than Chu Fengmian's. How could he be weaker than Chu Fengmian in terms of strength? Bang! When the 2 fists collided, a huge amount of spiritual energy spread out. What Feng Huoye expected was that Chu Fengmian would be sent flying by the punch. Did not happen. Instead, when the 2 fists collided, the strength of both sides was actually equal. Did this mean that Chu Fengmian's strength was not weaker than Feng Huoye's? It was even enough to compete with Feng Huoye's strength. How is this possible? The shock in Feng Huoye's eyes revealed his thoughts. How could a martial artist in the 7th tier of the body, refining realm compete with a martial artist in the 7th tier of the Divine Sea realm? Even the reborn Great Emperor Richlush, the #1 expert of the victorious martial nation, could not do this. Feng Huoye's arm was even numb from the impact of the punch. But Chu Fengmian's expression showed that he was still very relaxed. Could it be that this brat is a demonic beast in disguise? How could he be so strong? Feng Huoye cursed inwardly. Chu Fengmian's strength was not something a martial artist could possess. There was a difference of 9 whole levels between them, and he was still able to contend with the other party in terms of strength without being at a disadvantage. This was something that was absolutely impossible to achieve, and it was actually happening right before his eyes. Like I said, just because Grand Emperor Rich Lush couldn't do it doesn't mean I can't. Chu Fengmian sneered. He clenched his right hand into a fist and smashed it toward Feng Huoye. The speed of this punch was even faster than the previous one. The bloodline of the ancient war dragon was boiling in Chu Fengmian's body. Boundless fighting spirit erupted from his body. The 5 drops of primordial war dragon blood essence had already dyed Chu Fengmian's blood golden. Now, Chu Fengmian's skin seemed to have a golden glow. I don't believe that you still have that much power. Feng Huoye roared. For a body-refining realm martial artist to erupt with such terrifying power, he must have consumed an enormous amount of spiritual power. It was already not easy for Chu Feng to throw out the first punch. He did not believe that Mian High Goods would have such terrifying power for the second punch. Once again, he punched out. However, in this confrontation, Feng Huoye's thoughts were wrong once again. Chu Fengmian's punch was even harder and stronger than the previous one. Feng Huoye was even able to sense that his right arm was starting to become numb. This was because the confrontation of power was too intense, causing his right arm to nearly lose all feeling. This caused him to involuntarily take a step back. What? You don't want my head anymore? Chu Fengmian laughed when he saw Feng Huoye take a step back. Then he moved his feet and closed in on Feng Huoye. Bam! Another punch was thrown out. With this punch, Feng Huoye's body was sent flying several meters away. One of his arms had been broken by Chu Fengmian's punch. How could a body-refining realm martial artist have such a terrifying body? Even a martial artist at the peak of the Divine Sea realm shouldn't be able to throw out so many punches without rest. Feng Huoye screamed inwardly. This scene was beyond his knowledge. Normal warriors, even those at the peak of the Spirit Sea realm, would lose some of their spiritual power every time they threw out a punch. The power of each punch would be weakened due to the consumption of spiritual energy. This was what an ordinary martial artist was like. However, someone like Chu Fengmian, whose every punch was even stronger than the previous one, did not need to recover his spiritual energy. This was unheard of. The Battle Dragon spell that Chu Fengmian cultivated allowed him to become more powerful the more he fought. The power of his next punch would become stronger and stronger. In addition, the divine veins in Chu Fengmian's body could continuously replenish his spiritual energy. Therefore, Chu Fengmian did not need to worry about the consumption of his spiritual energy. With an endless supply of spiritual energy, Chu Fengmian could naturally throw out punches without a care. Bam! 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 Chu Fengmian's body kept flickering. In the sky, Feng Huoye's body was like a sandbag. Being hit here and there, his body was already covered with cuts and bruises. If he had not taken the explosive blood pill, he would have already been beaten to death. However, the explosive blood pill could only sustain his life. He did not even have the strength to resist. Under each of Chu Fengmian's punches, Feng Huoye was on the verge of death. Die! Boom! After the last punch, Feng Huoye's body rolled on the ground. He was no longer breathing. A martial artist at the 3rd level of the Divine Sea realm was actually beaten to death by Chu Fengmian after taking the explosive blood pill. Mu Yuanhua, who had witnessed all of this from the side, was already scared to death. He originally thought that the battle between Chu Fengmian and Feng Huoye would be a lose-lose situation, giving him a chance to escape. However, this Feng Huoye was now easily beaten to death by Chu Fengmian. It cannot be said to be easy. It was simply not on the same level of strength. It was as if Chu Fengmian was only a Divine Sea realm martial artist, while Feng Huoye, who was being suppressed by Chu Fengmian, was only a body refinement realm martial artist. Chu Fengmian glanced at Feng Huoye's corpse on the ground. With a grab of his hand, Feng Huoye's storage pouch was taken by Chu Fengmian. At the same time, the storage pouches of the remaining Candle Flame sect disciples were all taken by Chu Fengmian. These people wanted to kill Chu Fengyan and snatch Mu Yuanhua. Now that they were dead, it could only be said that they deserved more than death. Towards his enemies, Chu Fengyan never had the slightest bit of mercy. As long as it was an enemy, only death awaited them. Now, you should tell me where the Scarlet Flame Sword is. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.